we go again by the river. Are we gonna watch her drown?
The Morning Reset with Jabulani Nkolele.
Enough.
Nyache, ni pike nyache, panisali ni trompaka, anaruzi atena. Nyache, ni pike nyache, panisali ni landaka, anaruzi.
It's 6 o'clock Central Africa time, which means it's time to rise and shine right here on Channel Africa, where we bring you the African perspective. Broadcasting live from our studios in Johannesburg, South Africa. We're on the internet, www.channelafrica.co.za. And you can also catch us on your mobile app. Just go to the App Store, look for SABC Plus, and then Channel Africa and our show, Rise and Shine. Good morning, everybody. I'm Peter Ndoro.
Welcome back, Peter Ndoro.
Yes,
how was your
indeed.
trip?
It was great. I was in Sun City. We were engaged in matters of energy.
Oh, nice.
And it's very exciting what's out there and what Africa is trying to do.
Absolutely. And I'm very excited that you're back on the show. My name is Asanda Peta. Of course, we're together for the next 3 hours as we bring you news in and around our continent. In this first hour of Rise and Shine, we'll be looking at Rwanda and Mozambique, discussing strengthening security partnerships, and South Africa's African National Congress political party and the National Resistance Movement in Uganda aim to strengthen their relations. Those stories and more, of course, coming up. And you can get in touch with us on our social media platforms at Channel Africa 1 is our handle across all of those. We'll be having your question of the day, so do look out for that so that you can engage with us, and that will be later in this next hour. Let's get our news, though. I think it's time with Oned Nzinzi, and then after her will be Musibudi Makura with headlines. Sports-wise.
SABC News. The African perspective.
Thank you, Sanda, and a very good morning to our listeners. South Africa's National Police Commissioner, General Fani Masemola, says transnational organized crime remains a major threat across the continent. Masemola was speaking at the opening of the 27th International Interpol Conference in the Western Cape province. Law enforcement agencies from around the world have gathered to discuss strategies that will assist in combating emerging security threats and organized crime around the globe. Masemola says drug and human trafficking as well as cybercrime are a major threat.
Our duty as law enforcement leaders is not only to dismantle these criminal networks, but also to restore dignity and protection and hope to the people we serve. Esteemed delegates, Africa is a continent of immense potential of growth, innovation, and resilience. Yet, these very strengths are targeted by those who profit from instability and exploitation. The only way to protect this promise is to build strong institutions, share intelligence, harmonize our legal frameworks, and strengthen trust amongst our nation.
South Africa's International Relations and Cooperations Minister, Ronald Lamola, says South Africa will continue to advocate for peace on the global stage. He says the conflict on the continent are a concern and hinder economic development amid the U.S. imposition of tariffs on numerous countries, including the 30% tariff on South Africa. Lamola was briefing the media in Pretoria. He says South Africa has established a team to assess conflicts in the region.
A delegation led by the Deputy Director General for Africa, Ambassador Tebogo Seokolo, recently visited Burkina Faso, Mali and Niger to gain first-hand insights into the dynamics in the Sahel region. In the Great Lakes region, South Africa remains gravely concerned about the humanitarian and the security situation in the Eastern Democratic Republic of Congo, despite peace agreement.
The Secretary General of South Africa's African National Congress Party Youth League, Mtuoxolo Ngundle, says the national dialogue does not resolve the land question and the economy is a waste of time. The ANC Youth League is one of the many organizations that have criticized the national dialogue convened by the President Cyril Ramaphosa. Addressing media at the ANC's headquarters, Luthuli House in Johannesburg, Ngudle said the national dialogue should focus more on transforming the country's economy.
We're saying we're not going to accept anything that is dragging us to other things that are not talking about transforming this country's economy, including ensuring acceleration of land reform. And that's what we're proposing in the national dialogue. Any national dialogue that does not resolve the land question and the economy is a mere waste of time.
Lastly, the UN Human Rights Chief has condemned the destruction of thousands of olive trees by Israeli forces in the occupied West Bank over the weekend. Volker Turk says the army's actions are another example of the ongoing oppression and coercion of Palestinians. The BBC's Jacob Evans.
Videos posted online show the mangled remnants of scores of olive trees uprooted and destroyed by Israeli bulldozers. Israel said it flattened the trees as part of its search for a person accused of attacking an illegal settler nearby. Olives are crucial to Palestinian farmers, and harvest season starts in the next few weeks. In a post online, the UN said almost 1,000 people have been killed by Israeli forces and illegal settlers in the West Bank since the war in Gaza began, and more than 42,000 people have been forcibly displaced.
Channel Africa News, I'm Onele Nzinzi.
SABC News. The African Perspective.
And coming up in your sports news this hour, Manchester United suffer a shock early Carabao Cup exit on penalties to League Two side Grimsby Town, while Arina Sabalenka continues tie-break success in the US Open. I'll have details of these and other stories at the bottom of the hour.
Wake up, Africa. Peter Ndoro and Asanda Beda are here to help you rise and shine. Weekdays, 6 till 9 a.m. Central African Time. Only on Channel Africa.
It's 7 minutes past 6 Central Africa time. Now, every day after the 6 o'clock news, we bring you what we call the Africa Roundup. And here, we try to give you a concise catch-up of the news that played out and events across the continent in the last 24 hours. And that's to really keep you up to date and start your news day right here on Channel Africa. And we begin our roundup in Rwanda, where President Paul Kagame and visiting Mozambique President Daniel Chapo on Wednesday reaffirmed the depth of friendship and cooperation between the two countries, stressing the importance of strengthening security partnerships and unlocking new opportunities in trade and investment. Welcoming his guest at village Urugwiro in Kigali, President Kagame emphasized that Rwanda and Mozambique share a unique bond built on trust and solidarity.
Rwanda and Mozambique share a very strong bilateral ties, and above us, we are good friends, brothers and sisters. As you have just witnessed, we have renewed our cooperation in peace, security, and trade. Violent extremism on our continent is a growing threat to our people and development. As Africans, we need to own and confront this problem as one continent.
First Deputy Secretary General of South Africa's African National Congress political party, Nomvula Mukunyane, says the party and the National Resistance Movement in Uganda aim to strengthen their relations, which date back to the era of apartheid in South Africa. Mukunyane is in Kampala on the invitation of the National Resistance Movement.
One of the reasons why we are here is because of our historical relationships that predate the era of Oliver Tambo up to the current president, Comrade Cyril Ramaphosa. Our intentions about strengthening the capacity of African intelligence in terms of and most importantly, in having a shared vision on how we maximize our potential and resources to build a better Africa. They are now busy with organizational work, a party of 27 million members with 18 million being eligible voters. We are quite humbled and are also learning out of the work that has taken place.
France on Tuesday returned 3 colonial skulls held in Paris Museum to Madagascar 128 years after they were taken to France, including one believed to be that of a Malagasy king that was killed by French troops.
The skulls belong to members of the Sakalava ethnic group, including one presumed to belong to then-ruler King Tuwera. Madagascar's Minister of Communication and Culture, Valamaranti Danamera, hailed the return.
They are not a mere collector's item. They are the invisible and indelible ink, Madame Minister, that unites our present to our past. Their absence has been, for more than a century, 128 years, an open wound in the hearts of the Big Island, and particularly of the Sakalava community of Menabe.
Mera said the Malagasy government plans to honor the remains in a tribute coinciding with the anniversary of King Tuwera's execution in late August 1897 during France's colonization of the island.
Homes, livelihoods and graves have been washed away in the village of Apakin, one of more than a dozen coastal communities in Nigeria's Lagos state, grappling worsening ocean surges. David Doyle has more.
It was just the latest event in the centuries-old community of 3,000 people who have been left powerless as they watch the seas swallow their homes, livelihoods and ancestral land. According to a 2022 report in the Journal of African Earth Sciences, around 80% of the Lagos shoreline has been washed away in the past 5 decades. And while Lagos State says rising sea levels pose the biggest long-term climate risk, the study blamed deep water ports for the erosion.
A lot of dredging is happening, which is pushing water in the direction of communities, swallowing communities.
Environmentalist Philip Jakpo also points to government-backed projects, including the massive Dangote refinery.
Unfortunately, these communities are poor communities. Most times they don't have a representation in those discussions.
And that's how we come to the end of today's Africa Roundup. We'll have more for you tomorrow after the 6 o'clock news. Stay with us. Coming up shortly, Asanda will be taking a look at stories that have been resonating and featuring in the Central Africa region.
Get the news, music, and lifestyle of Africa on Channel Africa, the African perspective. AUSISA, the Association of Water and Sanitation Institution of South Africa, is a platform uniting Africa's water professionals. This November, Africa leads the conversation on water and sanitation. Join global and African leaders at the AUSISA Africa and Global South Dialogue 2025 from the 9th till the 12th of November at the Emperor's Palace, Johannesburg. From policy innovation, this is where action meets collaboration for a water-secure future. Register today at ausisa-watersan-dialogue.org or follow at AUSISA on social media. AUSISA, working together for sustainable water and sanitation security in Africa. The the KwaZulu-Natal Convention Bureau, in collaboration with Milvest Advisory and the city of Umhlathuze, bring you the 2025 Tourism Investment Forum Africa. As a global platform for local action, the Tourism Investment Africa aims to promote the secondary and tertiary cities and regions as attractive investment and tourism hubs. Be part of the movement transforming tourism in Africa. Join us for the TIFA 2025 from August 27 to 29 at Tembela Venue, Richards Bay, KZN, South Africa. New day, new stories. Start your morning right with Rise and Shine on Channel Africa.
Right, it's time now to take a look at some of the stories that are making headlines in the Central African region. We zoom into that as we speak to Aaron Gambi, geopolitical analyst, to unpack these stories. Aaron, how are you on this Thursday?
I'm good, thank you. Good morning to you, Asanda.
Good morning, and always great having these catch-up sessions with you. Today, let's start with Chad, who is battling a cholera outbreak that has killed 63 people. What can you tell us here?
Yeah, so the pandemic in Chad, this cholera outbreak is unfortunate, but this is largely because of the people that are fleeing the war in Sudan. So the war that's been going on for almost 3 years now has been ravaging Sudan terribly, and so people have fled in numbers. And so most of them actually find themselves in the eastern part of Chad. And so they have these refugee camps where they keep them, and the sanitation is not as desirable. Therefore, there's been a cholera outbreak there, and so about 63 people have died so far.
How has the government of Chad responded in terms of emergency assistance?
Well, basically, the government of Chad is trying to put in measures to help with the cholera outbreak. And also they've called upon the international community, such as the United Nations Human Rights for Refugee, to assist and help with the situation. But it doesn't seem like they really do have resources to put up facilities that can ensure hygiene and good sanitary, facilities in these camps. And I think that also the government is a bit overwhelmed because of the influx of these refugees coming into the country. Therefore, they're doing the best they can, but I don't think it's as good enough, unfortunately, because the numbers of the people reported with cholera is almost 1,000 now, and only 63 people have died so far.
Do we expect the numbers to rise, especially if you say the response from the government has not been adequate?
Definitely. I think that the government is playing catch up, and so they're doing everything they can, but I think they have limited resources. And so we expect a situation to become very dire if no further assistance is given to the government, especially from external players in terms of the international community.
Okay, let's move to Gabon now, where the president there has raised concerns over the rejection of candidates, this ahead of their elections in September in the country. President Brice Oligui Nguema says the disqualification of these candidates is an unacceptable practice.
I find it very hard to believe what the president is saying. I think that he is, remember, this is the guy that came through a military coup and of course then went to an election, and now he is the president of Gabon after actually outstaying a dynasty, a family dynasty that has ruled Gabon for a long time. So I think that he's desperate to get accolades, and he's desperate to position himself in a positive light. I don't know that this condemnation has anything to go by. I don't think it's meaningful. I don't think that what he's saying now has teeth to bite. If anything, he should not express displeasure, but he should actually demand that these that are disqualified be reinstated and participate in the legislative elections.
Sorry about that, Aaron. Our systems just froze there a little bit. So what reasons were given for the disqualification of these candidates, and what avenues can they now use? There's not much time. 27 September is going to be here now.
Yeah, I don't think that there's enough time to address this specific unfortunate situation. This is why I think that I think this might be some sort of tactic or politics at play, especially by the regime, to just completely disqualify these people at the legislative level of participating in an election. Because, like I said, if the president means well and he wants these people to participate in the elections, he didn't have to condemn the disqualification of them from being on the ballot. He had to just reinstate the process. He should have used his powers to give a directive that would override his decision. But it doesn't seem like he's going in that direction. I think that he's just happy to make a statement and let the status quo be so that it advantages him rather than the people that want to run, whom I believe are on the opposition side.
How do Gabonese voters feel about the president this time around? Does he still enjoy support?
Yes, he's quite popular. I think that the people of Gabon almost feel indebted to him for, like I said, for having taken out a family dynasty that ruled Gabon for over 40 years. So he came through this coup, he overthrew that family, and then he comes in and actually did have an election which he won overwhelmingly. I think that people think that he's done a good thing for the country, and I think that he wants to project that image going forward. But I'm still very suspicious to see how far he goes with doing good for the people of Gabon.
From a regional standpoint, can Gabon achieve electoral equity?
It's too early to tell. I mean, of course, Gabon has been in a very bad shape in terms of having been ruled for over 40 years by the same family that conducted sham elections. So if there's anything to go by, this would be the first time that Gabon conducts free and fair and credible elections on the legislative council level. But we're yet to see that. I think that it is a very young democracy in Gabon right now. And I think that we cannot really tell until we see how far they go with implementing some of the reforms that they have been doing.
All right, let's move to Equatorial Guinea now, where a court has convicted the country's president for a state plane that was sold. So it was the son of President Teodoro Obiang Nguema Masongo who illegally sold the plane belonging to the national airline. Was he working alone?
It seems like he wasn't working alone. There are others that are implicated in this process. You have to recall that he was in charge of this portfolio when he was in government. Therefore, there are a lot of people that were under him. But so far, we know that it is only him that has been convicted by the courts of law. But what is interesting to see here is that in 2023, the same son to the president was actually put on house arrest, and this was instigated by his half-brother, who is also in government, who's also serving his father as a minister. So it seems to me like this is more of a family issue and a family problem, rather than really politics at play.
So what kind of punishment will Ruslan Obiang Su, the son, now face?
Well, they have the court have slapped him with 6 years of imprisonment, or he has to pay about $225,000 as a fine, and also with that, if he pays that, then he also has to be charged what they're considering as the kind of damage that he did to the country. So there'll be more of damage, and also that amount that the country is expected to recover from this sale of the plane.
Yeah, and talking of recovery, then will the 50-year-old's assets overseas and abroad be seized as well, over and above the punishment?
Oh, well, this is something that I was trying to allude to. So the seized assets abroad are the ones that are under the other son's name. And so the one that implicated this one who sold the plane. So there are two sons, half-brothers, who are the sons of the current president. And the president has been at the helm of this country. He's 83 years old. He's been at the helm of this country for 46 years now. And it seems to me that the sons of people within the family are trying to position themselves to see what happens after the old man is not around. So the one who was indicted and convicted in Paris for embezzlement is a different son who actually implicated this other son who is now involved in a plane scandal. So it seems like it's a corruption in the family that is deeply rooted.
Will it have, this entire debacle, much of a negative impact on the president's reputation and legacy, since it seems to be, a battle between his sons, and it's not really him who is committing these crimes?
Well, he has very little credibility himself. I think that most people do see the regime as corrupt. They see it as a family affair, as a family dynasty. They see the regime as enriching itself rather than attending to the needs of the people. So I don't think that there is much of a legacy to talk about even after the president has left the presidency.
Okay, we move to the Central African Republic now. They have become the 46th AU member state to commit to advancing women's rights. In what ways will they be advancing women's rights?
So as of July 28th of this year, the Central African Republic has made a very momentous step. They have signed on to what they call the Maputo Protocols. They have ratified the Maputo Protocols. The Maputo Protocols are basically a treaty that advocates for the protection and the championing of women and girls' rights across the African continent. So they have made that commitment. And with that, the Maputo Protocol provides a legal framework that is followed in most of these countries, at least these 46 countries, on how to deal with issues to do with gender, how to deal with issues involving women and girls, such as early child marriages, such as genital mutilation for women and other things. So this is a very big step for the Central African Republic because of its culture, because of its history, because of its record in terms of human rights, specifically women's rights. Therefore, for them to ratify this protocol, it means that they have committed to follow through with a treaty that is highly regarded and considered by the African Union.
Okay, it's one thing to want to be part of the Maputo Protocol, but what do you think it will take then for the country to continue to uphold the rights of women and girls?
Well, it will take a lot of things because this is an issue that is not only political, it's a social, it's an economic, it's a cultural issue. All these things are things that you have to look at when you're looking at women issues in terms of the social lenses, the economic, and the political landscape as well. But like I said, Central African Republic, because of its background, because of its history, it seems like they have struggles in terms of equality before the law, and also issues to do with women having the same opportunities as men. Therefore, it is a momentous step that they've taken to commit to this, but the implementation only leaves for us to see what happens.
Okay, let's talk about the Institute of Security Studies. They're saying the wave of protests in Angola reflect historic lows that could continue into the 2027 election year. Do you agree?
Yes, there's a lot of dissatisfaction in Angola. And it doesn't seem like these protests are dying down. It seems like this keeps going on. And for reasons that are justifiable. For example, you have about 54% of unemployment among young people in Angola. You have a country that is rich in oil production, but yet you see fuel prices going up, commodity prices going up. You have a country that has been very peaceful since its independence, but yet the development of the country itself leaves much to be desired. Therefore, I think that the protests, which began with the student union organizing protests, peaceful protests, yet the police have tried to disrupt this, went from students to taxi drivers, now to the ordinary people and the peasant people on the streets. You find that this is going to fuel up as we go into the elections because the government is highly unpopular now. The MPLA, the party that is in power, it's facing a lot of intense pressure there is an issue of succession after the current president finishes his second term in 2027. Therefore, they have so much going on against them, and I think that it will only get worse.
Finally, the DRC, the Democratic Republic of Congo, has summoned senior military officials following setbacks in their battle with the M23 rebels. And this has to do with their meetings in Qatar for peace deals. What can you tell us?
So about 41 military generals and colonels have been summoned by Kinshasa so that they can look at what is going on, because of late the M23 have gained so much ground, they've conquered territory, and so the army, the Congolese army, has been losing ground. Therefore, these military officials were summoned so that the army can assess where the weaknesses are, and they can assess what they can do next in order to combat M23s. Now, the M23 rebels seem to have an upper hand in the eastern DR Congo. They have overcome a lot of territories that were, guarded and protected by the military. So they seem to be very comfortable going back to these talks in Qatar. If you recall, these talks began in March of this year when President Tshisekedi and President Paul Kagame went to Doha and met in Qatar. After that, we are told that in July, a delegation from the M23 and from the Congolese government actually met in Qatar as well. But since then, no progress has been made. No one has actually adhered to the agreement. Therefore, the M23 has been advancing and the killings keep going on. Unfortunately, the violence is going up. And so there was need for the government to reassess where they stand, what their strengths are in terms of the military, so that when they go to these talks, they can probably be able to come up with a truce that will hold.
All right, we'll see whether that will happen then. But thanks so much for your time, Aaron. We're going to leave it there for today's discussions. Thanking you again for your time, and have a great day for you and your little girls. I'm sure you'll have your hands full.
Thank you. Thank you, Asante.
Great. Aaron Gambi is a geopolitical analyst, giving us a look at some of the stories making headlines in the Central African region of our continent. Let's say good morning to Onele Nzinzi now. She's got our news headlines.
SABC News. Headlines. The African Perspective.
Thank you, Asanda. Kenyan human rights activist Boniface Mwangi, who has played a prominent role in anti-government protests, says he plans to run for presidency in the country's 2027 election. South Africa's National Police Commissioner General Fani Masemula says transnational organized crime remains a major threat across the continent, and the White House says the head of the U.S. Public Health Agency has been fired. She was only confirmed as Director for Center of Disease Control and Prevention 4 weeks ago. Channel Africa News, I'm Onele Nzinzi.
SABC News. Headlines. The African Perspective.
It's time to find out what's been happening in the world of sports. Please, Musibudi, don't say anything about Manchester United. I stayed up all night to watch that nonsense. Good morning.
Sports on Channel Africa. The African Perspective.
A very good morning from the sports desk. Well, Peter, that happens to be our leading story this morning. It was so good. We cannot not talk about Manchester United suffering a shock. Early Carabao Cup exit on penalties to League Two side Grimsby Town. A result, of course, that will be remembered for a very long time to come. So United lost at 12-11 on penalties to League Two side Grimsby Town in the Carabao Cup second round. Now, Grimsby had led about 2-0 before Brian Mbemo struck, as well as Harry Maguire levelled matters. Now, Ruben Amorim has failed now to win any of the Manchester United's first 3 matches of the season. This despite, of course, signing a new front line in Benjamin Sesko, Mateus Cunha, as well as Brian Mbemo, who all featured in the tie, with the pressure growing ahead of their Premier League fixture at home to Burnley this coming Saturday. This is what the coach of the side had to say. Peter, take a listen.
And we lost, the best team won. Yeah, I think it's really clear what they spoke. So let's move on from this day. And I think was really clear for everybody what happened today.
Right, onto this now. With barely few days to Nigeria's crucial 2026 World Cup qualifiers against Rwanda as well as South Africa, the Super Eagles' first-choice goalkeeper Stanley Wanwabi has been injured while on duty for Chipa United in the South African PSL on Tuesday night. So the goalkeeper, who is equally Chipa's number one goalkeeper, was stretchered off and replaced by Alson Sithole in the 35th minute away against Richards Bay FC in Durban in South Africa's KwaZulu-Natal province on Tuesday. Although details of the injury have not been ascertained, it however looks serious from the manner he was helped off the pitch. The other goalkeepers in the Super Eagles side include former Bandal Insurance Safe Hands Amos Asibegi, who now plays for Tanzania's Singida Black Stars. There's also Adieli Adibayo of Volos FC in Greece, as well as Sporting Lagos FC youthful goalkeeper Ebenezer Hartcourt. On to this now. Former Kenyan national team captain Victor Wanyama believes coach Benny McCarthy should be given enough support to build the national teams. This despite Harambee Stars suffering an exit from the Total Energies African Nation Chan tournament on home soil. So under the South African legend, Harambee Stars made history in Chan in their debut campaign, reaching the quarterfinals of their inaugural campaign. Now Kenya will still now shift their focus, should I say, to the next challenge, which happens now to be the 2026 World Cup qualifiers. Harambee Stars will host the Gambia on the 5th of September and the Seychelles on the 9th of September. Both matches will be played at the Kasarani Stadium in the city of Nairobi. Now the Stars will look to build on their Chan momentum as they continue chasing bigger dreams. On to tennis news now. Defending champion Aryna Sabalenka set the platform for a US Open second round victory over Polina Kudermetova by continuing her formidable tie-break record. Sabalenka claimed her 17th consecutive tie-break in a 7-6, 6-2 win in Wednesday's night session in New York. Now, being able to lock in when it mattered the most proved crucial once again for the world number one, who has now won 10 of her past 11 matches when winning a first set tiebreak. Now, taking the opener dampened her Russian opponent's spirit and led to Sabalenka also going on a break early in the second set. Sabalenka's service game was still a little scratchy, digging deep to save 2 break points before holding for 3-1, but her level improved as she raced towards victory. Sabalenka is, by the way, aiming to become the first player to defend the women's singles title since Serena Williams did so back in 2014. Next, she'll face off with Canada's Leila Fernandez, who was also a beaten finalist back in 2021 when she lost to Britain's Emma Raducanu. This is what Sabalenka had to say after winning that match.
Well, yeah, the first set was super tight, was super aggressive. It felt like there was almost like no points. It was more about serve and first shot. It was super quick. I'm glad that I was able to handle that pressure and put it back on her and then get that first set. And then in the second set, I felt much better on the return game. Serve was much better. So I'm really glad that in the first set, I stayed really strong.
And finally, in golfing news, Boxing South Africa says one of the main priorities in developing women's boxing is to establish safe spaces for female fighters to hone their craft. Now, McAusland Boxing Promotions in Johannesburg manages 5 female boxers, 4 of whom are champions. Headed by Colleen McAusland and with the number 1 ranked Smash Hadebe as the standard bearer, the women's boxers are able now to pursue their dreams in a professional environment. Now, boxing manager Colleen McAusland makes sure of that and also prioritizes the needs of her fighters more than the sport.
I need to protect my girls at all times. I won't allow them to travel without me. I'm very fussy about the changing rooms. They shouldn't share changing rooms with the males. It's against the rules. So, it's my job to make sure that that's how they get treated. Girls have a certain time of the month which they're not comfortable with, and we need to understand that as women. And unfortunately, the men don't understand that. And when it comes to our girls fighting, they don't fight enough. The promoters don't put them on the shows enough. We just find that we're neglected.
Right, so that's a wrap from the sports desk at the SAWA. For any sports stories you'd like to share with us, simply send us an email. That's to newsroom@channelafrica.co.za or call us on +27 11714 4459. For Channel Africa Sport, I am Musibudi Makura.
Sports on Channel Africa. The African perspective.
Africa.
Oui, c'est moi.
Abedi est un passionné de musique dans l'âme. Il a un goût pour toutes sortes de musique et passe ses journées à écouter Channel Africa.
J'aime beaucoup la musique africaine.
Ok. Devinez quoi? Channel Africa veut aider Abedi et les mélomanes du monde entier à découvrir encore plus de musique incroyable. C'est pourquoi Channel Africa appelle les artistes africains à soumettre leur musique. Chers artistes, n'oubliez pas de nous fournir toutes vos informations pertinentes à l'email adresse musique@channelafrica.co.za. Les soumissions sont votre chance d'être entendues, mais elles ne garantissent pas une playlist. Toutes les soumissions seront soigneusement examinées pour voir si elles répondent aux exigences de notre station. Channel Africa, la perspective africaine.
Start your day right with Channel Africa Breakfast.
That smells delicious.
Live, 5 days a week.
And now let's find out what's happening in the world of business as we get our first update for this morning. Here's Buntle Headbush with those details.
Business news on Channel Africa. The African perspective.
Thanks, Asanda, and a very good morning to our listeners. In our top business story this morning, Qatari investment firm Al Mansour Holdings has signed a $20 billion partnership agreement with Mozambique to support sectors the government is prioritizing, including energy and agriculture. It's the latest in a series of investments by Al Mansour Holding across Africa, with similar deals in the Democratic Republic of Congo, Zambia, and Botswana announced in the past 2 weeks. Yesterday, Al Mansour Holdings announced the acquisition of a 19.9% stake in Australia's Invictus Energy to help finance a promising gas project in Zimbabwe. In Zambia, President Hakainde Hichilema announced last week that the investment firm had pledged $19 billion in investments for the Southern African nation. Nigeria has announced a 6-month ban on the export of raw shea nuts, from which many beauty creams are made. The move is aimed at making the trade more lucrative, as Nigeria is losing out by not producing much shea butter locally. The country produces nearly 40% of the world's annual crop, but it only accounts for 1% of the $6.5 billion global market, a situation Vice President Kashim Shettima described as unacceptable. Algeria will host the 4th edition of the Intra-African Trade Fair, or IATF. The fair, which takes place from the 4th to the 10th of September in Algiers, is set to turn the Algerian capital into the epicenter of African trade. Algeria's ambassador to South Africa, Ali Achou.
It will be a very good occasion for the Africans to meet, to exchange their experiences, their capacities, and why not to try to create an African economy.
South Africa's Social Development Minister, Sisisi Tolashe, has given assurance that social grant payments will not be affected by the termination of the Master Service Agreement between the South African Social Security Agency and Postbank. The minister emphasized that social grant payments will be deposited directly into the beneficiaries' bank accounts, including those who bank with Postbank. Appearing before the Standing Committee on Social Development in Parliament, Minister Tolashe says the department will work with the Reserve Bank to ensure that regulatory compliance is upheld.
I must emphasize here that Postbank remains a fully licensed and operational financial institution, and beneficiaries will continue to receive their grants in their Postbank accounts, just as they have before. No change in this regard will occur.
India has decried the so-called secondary U.S. tariffs as unfair, unjustified and unreasonable. U.S. President Donald Trump slapped an additional 25% tariff, raising the overall levy to 50% on goods coming from India as a penalty for New Delhi's continued purchase of Russian oil. Significant damage to the Indian economy is expected, especially in its vital export-driven sectors such as clothing. Shoe factory owner Puranjua says a tariff will ultimately hurt the U.S.
They must understand that this tariff is not going to burden us. They are going to burden their own customers, own consumers.
And now taking a look at the indicators this morning, $1 in Nigeria is trading at 1,534 naira. In Botswana, it's 13 pula 31. Kenya, the dollar is trading at 128 shilling 45. And in Zambia, it's 23 kwacha 33. Moving to the BRICS countries, $1 in Brazil is trading at 5 rial 43, Russia 80 rubles 34, India it's 87 rupees 71, China 7 yuan 15, and South Africa $1 is trading at 17 rand 68 cents this morning. $1 is trading at 74 pence to the British pound and 86 to the euro. Looking at commodities, gold is trading at $3,390 per ounce, platinum at $1,342 per ounce, while the price of Brent crude oil is at $67.47 a barrel this hour. And those are your business news. I'll be back with more in the next hour. For any business stories you'd like to share with us, please send an email to newsroom@channelafrica.co.za or call us on +27 11 714 4459. For Channel Africa Business, I am Buntle Headbush.
Business news on Channel Africa. The African perspective. G20 in Africa, exclusive to Channel Africa.
Our G20 fact is that South Africa's participation in the G20 is guided by its 4 strategic foreign policy pillars. These are the national interests, the African agenda, South-South cooperation, and multilateralism. The theme of the G20 South African presidency is solidarity, equality, and sustainability. Did you know that? Well, that's our G20 fact for this Thursday, the 28th of August.
G20 in Africa, exclusive to Channel Africa, championing Africa through solidarity, equality, and sustainability. New day, new stories. Start your morning right with Rise and Shine on Channel Africa.
UN experts are calling for the immediate and unconditional release of Malian activist Clement Mamadou Dembélé, who has been in detention since November 2023, despite a court ruling clearing him of all charges. The case has raised concerns about politically motivated prosecutions and broader human rights violations in Mali. To unpack the UN's position and ongoing efforts, I spoke to Eduardo Gonzalez on the line to New York. Mr. Gonzalez is a UN independent expert on the situation of human rights in Mali. And I began by asking him why there was significant concern about Mr. Dembélé.
The concern, I think, has to do with a number of issues. The first one is that what is happening in Mali at this point is not limited to the case of Mr. Dembélé. This is one case among many of persons who are seen or perceived as opponents by the authorities in the country and that face judicial and criminal consequences for their actions. The case of Mr. Dembélé is particularly egregious because Mr. Dembélé, at the moment of his detention in 2023, was being active in a number of protests that had to do with quality of life. What happens is that in Mali, citizens are complaining for the last couple of years about difficulties in the regular services. So, for example, electricity, there have been electricity cuts affecting the capital. And so Mr. Dembélé was active among the citizens who complained about this and was organizing demonstrations on this issue. He is arrested in November 2023, and just a couple of days after his arrest, he is accused of a very, very serious crime indeed. The National Cyber Criminality Authority, which is a specific prosecutor for these kind of cases, accuses him of having made threats against the life of the president of the country, General Goita. Now, the evidence for this supposed crime is a recording that they produce of supposedly Mr. Dembele making threats against the life of the president.
You've warned that Dembele's detention could reflect a broader pattern of politically motivated prosecutions in Mali. Do we know how widespread the problem is?
Indeed. So what is happening in Mali is that the country is undergoing what the authorities call a transition, meaning the current authorities are the result of two military coups d'etats that took place in 2020. And what the authorities have done over this time is to operate with a specific semi-parliament group called the National Council on the Transition. And so when they pass orders and decrees, they typically go to this National Council on Transition, and they acquire the force of law. But this has happened in a very exceptional manner because the authorities always said that there was going to be an end to this transition. That is, that the military committed to give back power to civilians through free elections. And announcements of elections have happened over the years, but they have never been honored. The last time President Goita announced elections was in October 2024, and General Goita went as far as to indicate that there should be a budget made for the elections this year, but all the contrary has happened. This election has never materialized. There are more and more restrictions on political activities, to the point that in May this year, all political activities were forbidden and political parties were dissolved. So there is a lot of disquiet in the civic public sphere in Mali. And different actors in civil society or in political society have complained in many ways about this, have written pieces about this, and more the fact of expressing concern about the length of the transition is seen as unacceptable opposition by the authorities, and it includes very, very serious measures. The case of Mr. Dembele is the case of a person, he's not the only one, who is arrested for complaining about issues of quality of life and provision of services. And the problem is that this situation cascades because, for example, just a few weeks ago, a former prime minister, Mr. Masamura, expressed solidarity with political prisoners, with people who are undergoing this situation, and expressed solidarity among other people with Mr. Dembele in his social networks. The result is that the former prime minister is arrested himself, accused of hurting the credibility of the authorities, which is a form of accusation that this cyber criminality authority is using more and more.
What is the UN doing to support Mali in strengthening its justice system and protecting human rights there?
Well, as you know, the United Nations had an active presence in Mali. It had a mission on stabilization that was established right after the 2012 crisis. And not only it had this this mission, but also a very active and strong military component of the mission that provided security in the populations that are being or were being at that point affected by the conflict with radical violent, which are terrorist organizations linked to extremist religious positions. So, however, the mission of the UN did not just have a military component, they had an integral component, including a component on human rights. The current authorities in Mali were offended by reports and information that came continuously from the human rights component of the UN mission, indicated that they felt unfairly criticized or unfairly targeted by these reports. And things came to a point of real conflict when Mali denied a specific massacre that was alleged to have been committed, a massacre that was committed by Malian forces with the presence of auxiliary forces of Russia. And so that ended up creating a real conflict between the mission and the government of Mali. First, the government of Mali decided to expel the chief of the human rights component. And finally, Mali expressed that they did not want to have the continuity of the UN mission in the country. So the reality is that Mali is more and more isolating itself from forms of cooperation with the international community, in particular, in this case, with the UN. Add to that, of course, that Mali is also breaking other diplomatic and peacemaking linkages in the region. It is very well known that Mali abandoned the ECOWAS community and established its own alliance, the Confederation of Sahelian States, with Burkina and Niger. And also, Mali has, as I said, strengthened its alliance with Russian military components. This is what was usually known as the Wagner Group, and that now has transitioned into the so-called Africa Corps, also a Russian military presence. Perhaps what is more serious about the decisions that have been taken is that Mali at the same time declared that it withdrew from the peace process that it had initiated in 2015 under the auspices of Algeria with separatist groups in the north. By doing that, the conflict with the north separatist groups has basically been restarted. So now, instead of confronting principally the actions of terrorist organizations that are religious extremists, now Mali is also conducting operations against separatists in the north. And all these operations and this conflict, of course, creates enormous risk to civilians. So that's what we have in Mali now. On the one side, a political military situation that is very serious, that creates enormous risks for civilians in the areas of conflict, a conflict that expands to most of the country now. And on the other hand, a very clear shrinking of the public and civic sphere. And the end result of this, for the time being, is that the authorities have decided to close down any potential avenue of opposition. On the one side, with these kind of actions against perceived opponents, on the other hand, with the dissolution of political parties. And the last events were about a month ago, when the Malian authorities finally announced that they wanted to stay 5 more years in power, that is to extend the transition 5 more years under the leadership of President Goita, which could be renewable in as much as the situation demanded it. So in essence, that means that the Malian authorities have decided to stay in power. There is no more talk about the end of the transition. There are no political instrument, that is parties, to actually carry out a transition. And they are announcing that President Goita is going to continue for 5 more years, which are in principle also extensible. So the situation is very serious.
That was Eduardo Gonzalez, UN independent expert on the situation of human rights in Mali, speaking to me on the line from New York.
It's 7 o'clock Central African time. Good morning to you as we enter the second hour of Rise and Shine. This is Channel Africa from an African perspective, bringing you news in and around our continent. We are on the SABC Plus app, on www.channelafrica.co.za, as well as on YouTube, live streaming at Channel Africa 1. I'm Asanda Peta.
And I'm Peter Ndoro. Thanks so much indeed for joining us. Excuse me. Coming up on the program, we have quite a lot of interviews that we'll be doing in this hour and the next. And we'll be looking at Mozambique's president visiting Rwanda, and President Kagame is saying that the relationship between these two countries has been quite close, and this is an opportunity for them to further cement that relationship. I'm looking forward to 8 o'clock, though. I'm going to be talking to a young woman, 22 years old, who's running for president in Mozambique. So all of this and much more still to come right here. But first, let's catch you up with the news with Onelin Sinsi, and then the news headlines with Musibudi Makura.
SABC News. The African Perspective.
Thank you, Peter. Kenyan human rights activist Boniface Mwangi, who has played a prominent role in anti-government protests, says he plans to run for presidency in the country's 2027 election. Mwangi previously ran unsuccessfully for parliament in 2017 on an anti-corruption platform. He was expelled from neighboring Tanzania in May after traveling there to observe a hearing in a treason case against opposition leader Tundu Lissu. In July, a Kenyan court charged Mwangi with possession of tear gas canisters and a single rifle round found in his home. He pleaded not guilty, saying the authorities had no evidence and called the prosecution a big shame. Gunmen have killed at least 2 people and abducted over 100, mostly women and children, in an attack in Nigeria's Zamfara state. Zamfara is the epicenter of attacks by armed men known locally as bandits in northwest Nigeria, where gunmen have made travel and farming dangerous. According to Nigeria's geopolitical research consultancy, the SBM intelligence, at least 4,722 people were abducted between July 2024 and June this year. Residents say they fear further attacks at the armed groups is reportedly attempting to cross from the forest boundary again. Zamfara police did not issue any comment. South Africa's National Police Commissioner General Fani Masemola says transnational organized crime remains a major threat across the continent. Masemola was speaking at the opening of the 27th International Interpol Conference in Cape Town. Law enforcement agencies from around the world have gathered to discuss strategies that will help combat emerging security threats and organized crime around the globe. Masemola says drug and human trafficking as well as cybercrime are a major threat.
Our duty as law enforcement leaders is not only to dismantle these criminal networks, but also to restore dignity and protection and hope to the people we serve. Esteemed delegates, Africa is a continent of immense potential of growth, innovation, and resilience. Yet, these very strengths are targeted by those who profit from instability and exploitation. The only way to protect this promise is to build strong institutions, share intelligence, harmonize our legal frameworks, and strengthen trust amongst our nation.
Tributes continue to pour in following Eyewitness News associate political editor Tidi Madia's passing in South Africa at a hospital after a short illness. Tidi's recent trending work included reporting from the Oval Office in Washington, D.C. earlier this year during a meeting between U.S. President Donald Trump and South Africa's President Cyril Ramaphosa. In that same trip, she challenged the News Nation journalists peddling the false claim of white genocide in South Africa. Aged 42, Rise Mzansi spokesperson Mabine Siabe says her ability to engage with politicians across the political spectrum was remarkable.
Tidi, as she was more commonly known as, was a no-nonsense, fierce and an unbiased practitioner who plied her trade with passion, love and accuracy. Her warm yet direct way of interrogating politicians and other public figures will be sorely missed. On behalf of Rise Mzansi, I wish to convey heartfelt and solemn condolences to the Madia family, the Fourth Estate and all her loved ones. May her soul rest in peace. Lala ngoxolo Tidi.
Lastly, the White House says the head of the U.S. Public Health Agency has been sacked. Lawyers for Susan Monarez accused the Health Secretary Robert F. Kennedy Jr. of weaponizing public health for political gain. She was only confirmed as Director for Center for Disease Control and Prevention 4 weeks ago. The BBC's Arunade Mukherjee.
In a statement, Ms. Monarez's lawyers said she was targeted because she refused to rubber stamp unscientific, reckless directives and fire dedicated health experts. They said she chose to protect the public rather than serve the political agenda, adding that she has neither resigned nor received a notification from the White House that she has been fired. As a person of integrity and devoted to science, they said Ms. Monarez would not resign. Shortly after her departure was announced, at least 3 other CDC leaders resigned, according to emails obtained by the BBC's US partner CBS News.
Channel Africa News, I'm Onele Nzinzi.
SABC News. The African Perspective.
And coming up in your sports news this hour, Sifan Hassan confirms the decision to skip the World Championships in favour of the Sydney Marathon, while Taylor Townsend as well as Yelena Ostapenko involved in a heated US Open exchange. Details of these and other stories coming up at 7:30.
Start your day informed, inspired, and entertained. Asanda and Peter bring you Rise and Shine. Weekdays, 6 till 9 a.m. Central African Time.
Let's go to Mozambique and Rwanda now, where Mozambique's President Daniel Chapo is in Rwanda on a 2-day working visit, where he and President Paul Kagame held excellent relations between their countries and signed new bilateral agreements, including a Status of Forces agreement to strengthen security cooperation. To unpack the significance of this visit, we're joined now by independent political analyst and risk consultant, Marissa Lorenzo. Marissa, thank you for joining us. How are you on this Thursday?
Good morning, Asanda. I'm well, thanks. How are you?
I'm good. Thank you so much. And thanks for making time, as usual. Let's start on the broader significance of President Daniel Chapo's first official visit to Rwanda since taking office.
Oh, it's coming at a very interesting time. Mozambique is really desperate to restart the onshore LNG projects, but it seems that some of the oil majors, mostly Total Energies, are still quite nervous about the state of security within the province. And central to securing the province and not really creating stability, there's still huge issues there, but definitely the Rwanda Defense Forces have been seen as key to allowing business to continue, creating a more enabling business environment amongst all of this insecurity. It's not really clear where the relationship between Rwanda and Mozambique was going. I'm personally surprised it's taken Chapo so long to actually do an official visit to Rwanda. So I think it's coming at a time when Mozambique is really pulling out all of the stops to make sure that it makes all of the investors happy so that the LNG projects can restart. This is a fundamental part of it.
So with the signing of the status of forces agreement between the two countries, what does this agreement mean in practical terms?
So we don't have the details of it yet, but basically it seems to extend it's even more of a formalization of the existing bilateral agreement that's been between Mozambique and Rwanda since mid-2021. So mid-2021 is when the RDF first entered Mozambique. Around 1,000 troops came into the province and tried to secure key areas. One of them was the Palma district, which is located where the onshore LNG projects are. So it seems now that, it was never really clear how long Rwanda was going to be in the country for. We've heard about 2028, 2029. They've spoken about equipping the Mozambican armed forces so that they are then able to continue helping to secure the province, even when the RDF is on. But it seems now that there's a much more solid agreement in place by signing a status of forces agreement. And I think that this will give really big reassurance to business in the area. And it's also an extension, again, of these stronger bilateral ties between Rwanda and Mozambique that we saw start under the former president, Nyusi, from mid-2021.
So beyond security, do you think this visit will pave the way for deeper economic and trade ties between Rwanda and Mozambique? You talk about some of the fears in the business community being allayed as far as security agreements are signed.
Truthfully, no. I think that the main focus of this is the security agreement and the ongoing presence of the RDF. I'm sure that they will mention other agreements and maybe talk about boosting trade between the two countries, but neither countries really are big producers in any major kind of sector. So I think really the focus of this is security. If we look at also at who Chapo brought with him, the main figure there is the Minister of Defense, Christophe Nchume. And yes, he brought people from the Finance Ministry and from the International Relations Cabinet as well. But really the focus here is on defense. And I'm sure we'll hear about wanting stronger ties between the two, but this is really the main focus. And again, it's coming at a time where Chapo has been urging Total Energies to restart its project. Total has allegedly been very worried about the continued presence of the RDF. So I think it was very important that a more firm agreement had to come into place. And I think that this is dominating the focus between the two countries.
What is needed then to ensure that clear guidelines are in place when it comes to this security partnership between Mozambique and Rwanda?
Well, having a status of forces agreement is actually much better than the previous just sort of bilateral agreement. It gets rid of some of the legal grey areas in terms of it will give the RDF a more clearly defined mandate than it might have had previously. We might get more clarity on what some of its timelines are for being in the province and maybe what its role actually is. Obviously it's sort of been defined as peacekeeping, but it's not. I don't think we've really had a very, very clear idea until now. And I think the status of forces agreement, just by its very nature, will spell that out a lot more clearly because it has to.
As far as clear guidelines are concerned, should there also be some flexibility exercised between the two countries where, they look at what the future could be and the unforeseen? Or could that flexibility in terms of the clarification of guidelines with the RDF pose its own challenges?
I'm sure that there is some kind of flexibility. I mean, a status of forces agreement is not going to be something that goes on indefinitely. It would have to be renewed at various points in time. So it will have to respond to the evolving nature of the insurgency in Cabo Delgado as well. But I think what's really key here are the optics of this. The RDF is much more respected, I think, among the international community for being able to provide some kind of resistance against the insurgents, much more than the Mozambican armed forces. And this is very important to have in place for that reason.
How does this visit reflect President Chapo's foreign policy priorities and his approach to regional diplomacy, especially compared to his predecessor, Philippe Nyusi?
Yeah, well, it's quite interesting because Nyusi, especially during his second term, between 2019 and 2024, he really seemed to take a step away from closer relations with South Africa, and he didn't seem to approve of the SADC mission in Mozambique, which is also to fight the insurgency, and there were a lot of issues around that. And that mission, of course, obviously had involvement from many SADC members, but was primarily led by South Africa. And it was under his tenure that Mozambique forged much closer ties with Rwanda, particularly on the security front, but also politically. There were various agreements that were made. When Chapo came into office, Rwanda didn't seem to be as much of a priority, and he seemed to be keen to reset some of the friction between with the ties between South Africa and Mozambique. But the thing is, with the RDF continuing to be in Cabo Delgado, it's not possible, to not nurture those ties with Rwanda. So I think that he's now striking much more of a balancing act in his foreign policy approach.
Merisha, we're going to leave it there for today. We always appreciate your insights. Have a great Thursday.
Great. Thanks so much. And the same to you.
Thank you. Merisha Lorenzo is independent political analyst and risk consultant, helping us unpack the implications of Mozambique's President Daniel Chapo's visit to Rwanda and the new bilateral agreements signed.
Wake up to the essence of the continent. Rise and shine on Channel Africa.
Right, let's take a look at this story now. The 75th World Health Organization, WHO Regional Committee for Africa conference that Zambia has been hosting has come to a close with commitments by member states to prioritize health despite the continent facing numerous health challenges. The Regional Committee, which is the highest WHO decision-making body in the region, convenes once a year, and the Lusaka one has been under the theme Building a Healthier Africa Together. Our correspondent Arthur Davis Scopo has been attending the conference and gives us a wrap-up.
Yes, it is clear that weak health systems are a threat to development of any society. And it is by this that the World Health Organization, WHO, established the Regional Committee for Africa, where African ministers of health would sit, discuss and endorse policies that look at activities and financial plans aimed at improving the health of the people of the continent. Zambia's President Hakainde Hichilema, who opened the three-day conference, called for enhanced collaboration amongst African countries.
We need to position health as a driver for regional trade and industrialization.
Hichilema, who is also WHO bestowed champion of cholera control in Africa, is asking other African countries to take lead in other innovations or interventions, as he pledged that Zambia will focus on cholera vaccine manufacturing soon.
Should we depend on someone outside of this continent for a painkiller? Absolutely not. To address these challenges, and Zambia will take the lead in the cholera local vaccine manufacturing, and other countries must do other things. Then we don't duplicate.
WHO Director General Tedros Ghebreyesus expressed concern.
According to WHO's latest analysis, health aid is projected to decline by up to 40% this year compared to just 2 years ago. This is not a gradual shift, it's a cliff edge. Life-saving medicines are sitting in warehouses. Health workers are losing jobs. Clinics are closing. And millions are missing out on immunization and care.
The conference has had over 600 delegates from across the continent attending, including 47 African ministers of health or their representatives, global and regional health leaders, development partners, among other local stakeholders. Concerns during the conference, such as low health workforce on the continent, need for improved and increased immunization, integration of non-communicable diseases in the key health strategies were some of the issues that were raised. Dr. Michael Edekunle Charles of RBM Partnership to End Malaria calls on African leaders to invest more in health.
And we're really calling on our leaders to ensure that we invest in health.
South Africa's Minister of Health, Aaron Motsoaledi, and Botswana's Deputy Minister of Health, Lawrence Okedise, spoke to the need for enhanced collaboration in health diplomacy. Dr. Charity Binker and Bernard Okede of African Media and Malaria Research Network
because I believe strongly that the disease burden that Africa faces right now is more about ignorance than the disease itself. Because people are refusing treatment, people are doing self-medication, they don't take proper doses of drugs, all because they are ignorant about so many things.
The role of the media. You people play a very, very pivotal role on public education and awareness.
Ethiopia is set to host the next committee meeting in 2026. Reporting in Lusaka, Zambia, I'm Arthur Davis, Scopo.
Download the SABC app and take Channel Africa with you everywhere you go. 9 to 12 midday Central African Time. On the move with Palisa Tau and Benjamin Mushatami.
Should influencers be expected to be impactful in society? If there is a social or societal conversation that goes up, should we be waiting eagerly to hear what the influencers have to say?
They are more than just entertainers. They are thought leaders to some certain degree. They influence culture, they influence people's thought processes, they set trends, they shape opinions of people. And the sad reality is, although a lot of them don't want to accept it, I think we're getting better with them realizing that embarking in that journey and in that space comes with a certain level of responsibility.
I see it differently in that, professionals are already good at their job, but there is an optionality that they might have to use the position that they hold in society to be able to deliver a message. This year you made the example of actors and actresses. So the same could apply to a sportsman. Just because someone's good at soccer doesn't mean that they have to have an influence over society from a specific standpoint.
Keeping you on the know and on the move. From Cape to Cairo, Dakar to Dar es Salaam. Rise and shine with Peter Ndoro and Asanda Peda on Channel Africa.
Reports are emerging from Mozambique's Cabo Delgado province that say that on Friday, August the 22nd, naval personnel allegedly fired upon a civilian boat sailing between Macomia and Ibo, believing that it had been hijacked by insurgents without verifying the claim. Now, witnesses say that between 5 and 7 civilians, mainly fishermen carrying salt, were killed. Now, this is the second such incident in under 2 months, heightening fears of erratic military behavior in the air and at sea in the region. To help us make sense of what might have happened and what this means or signals for Mozambique's counterinsurgency operations, we're now joined on the line by Piers Pigo, who's a consultant with the Focus Group. Piers, thanks very much indeed for joining us and welcome to the program.
Good morning, Peter, and good morning to the listeners.
All right, let's start by, I don't know if you can walk us through what we currently know about this incident and how much confidence we have in available information.
Well, I think that's a good starting point, Peter, is that the quality of the information coming out of Cabo Delgado is often quite sketchy. However, the reports that have been received in relation to this incident show that a fisherman leaving one of the islands in Ibo district, which Ibo district is one of the province's 17 districts and is made up of a constellation of islands off the coastline, that traders coming from one of those islands were intercepted by a naval patrol boat. And it would appear from what we know that there was an incident in which at least 5 were killed. Their bodies were found on the Macomia coastline with their IDs and cell phones in there and so forth. So it's not clear whether they were shot on the boats or they were captured and taken elsewhere and shot and so forth. But it does appear as though the Navy, well, at least the Navy is being accused of dealing with this. Now, in this particular incident, the Navy is denying it's involved. It did attack civilians on a boat further up the coastline a few weeks ago, and it admitted its involvement in that. And that matter is supposedly under investigation.
So, I mean, as you said, this isn't the first attack by the Navy, allegedly, on civilians at sea. Could this be, I don't know, pointing to systemic issues and how naval operations are being conducted? If it's true that that both incidents are Navy related?
Well, it's not the first time the Navy have been involved in these kinds of allegations over the last few years. The coastline is a particularly difficult one to patrol, and the Mozambican Navy is systemically under-resourced and under-capacitated. Those are very difficult waters to navigate, and whilst there are some experienced captains and crew within the Navy, they simply do not have the kind of equipment, support and boats to be able to provide security on that coastline to address the nature of the threat that is presented by the insurgents along that area. This is the area we're talking about is an area of serious focus for the insurgents over the last 8 years. It's one of their sort of stronghold areas, and they know the conditions there extremely well. So you're dealing with an under-resourced Navy. I mean, this is complemented by challenges that we see on land and certainly in the air as well, where there's virtually no capacity to take on these insurgents. So this is part of a wider set of problems relating to Mozambique's security capacities. And of course, we know that the Rwandans have been deployed. 1,000 of them are in Cabo Delgado, but they appear of late to not be providing a serious response to attacks that are taking place in various parts of the province where they have responsibility. I should point out that they do not have a coastal naval responsibility, and this is primarily in the hands of as I've said, a very, very under-resourced, acutely under-resourced Mozambican Navy.
Yeah, I mean, resources is one thing, but what it sounds like is snap judgments, shoot first, ask questions later. Are there intelligence failures maybe, and training issues here? What could be playing out?
Well, I think that's very true, Peter, that you are dealing with security services that have not been effectively trained and resourced. There has been training provided by a number of external actors, including the European Union, the Americans, and so forth, but it's disjointed, it's inadequate, it doesn't tie into the kind of support and development that's required in control and command, the logistics and supply processes are there. And often you're finding real serious disciplinary problems within the security forces. The Navy is regarded, ironically, in some respects, as the kind of a more of an elite force within the Mozambican security forces, but they are acutely under-resourced. And in these contexts, and particularly, we've seen this with land forces where soldiers feel abandoned in very vulnerable positions. They often abandon their own positions when confronted by insurgents. There's been reported incidents of weapons being sold out of armories to the insurgents themselves. And so you've got a wider set of systemic challenges relating to conditions that these guys are operating in, poor morale and so forth. And that lends to ill discipline and instability within the security forces themselves. So there are a number of severe systemic problems which are not new. They've been there for a long time. And despite efforts from external actors to support and develop the Mozambican security forces, there's still a very, very long way to go, and they certainly are not fit for purpose in terms of the way that they are being deployed and supported in the Cabo Delgado theatre of operations to be able to take on this kind of threat.
I suppose when civilians are killed by the people that are supposed to be protecting them, this is the kind of thing I wonder if insurgent groups like Islamic State might try to leverage to recruit or build local sympathy.
Oh, there's no doubt about that. I think that there's a huge frustration amongst many communities in Cabo Delgado. In late July, there was a set of attacks from a group of 40 to 60 insurgents moving into southern districts of Cabo Delgado. This displaced almost 60,000 people. The security forces didn't respond for over a week or so. And I think the lack of trust that many communities have is palpable. And in a number of other instances where security forces have crossed the line, they've been involved in human rights violations, in looting and stealing, and there are reports and of these incidents on a fairly regular basis, that this feeds into conditions that obviously can be exploited by insurgent groups. Now, this doesn't mean that people are flocking to join the insurgency. The insurgents' recruitment methods are brutal. They kidnap and they force people into these situations. But you've got communities across Cabo Delgado, particularly in the most affected districts, that are caught in the middle of this between violent insurgents and often a unstable and violent set of security force actors as well. And navigating that space is extremely difficult for communities that have been uprooted and displaced over the course of a number of years. I mean, you have hundreds of thousands still displaced in Cabo Delgado. You have hundreds of thousands who are living in this kind of in-between world between the insurgency and a government that is encouraging people to go back into the communities that they've fled. But of course, that then provides space for insurgents to operate within. And we've seen insurgents active in 8 districts in the last 3 weeks. That's over half of the districts of the it's half the districts of the province itself. So this shows you that this is an insurgency that certainly is not in decline.
Piers, we're going to have to leave it there, but thank you very, very much indeed for your insights on this situation. Thanks for your time.
It's a great pleasure, Peter. Thank you.
That's Piers Pigu, who's a consultant with the risk analysis group, the focus group, talking to us about this situation in Mozambique where the Navy is being accused of killing civilians without verifying who these civilians are, perhaps mistakenly thinking that these civilians or the people on board had been hijacked by, I don't know, various enemies of the state, for want of a better word. All right, we'll keep a track of that particular story for you. Right now, though, it's 7:30. Here are your news headlines with Onele Nsinzi.
SABC News. Headlines. The African Perspective.
Looking at your headlines, Kenyan human rights activist Boniface Mwangi, who has played a prominent role in anti-government protests, says he plans to run for presidency in the country's 2027 election. South Africa's Minister of International Relations and Cooperations, Ronald Lamola, has called for unity and dialogue between the Zambian government and the family of the late former Zambian President Edgar Lungu. Lamola emphasized South Africa's respect for the judicial process after the Constitutional Court found that the Zambian government is entitled to repatriate Lungu's remains. And a new study suggests that the weather that helped drive the record fires that have swept through much of Europe this year was made significantly more intense by climate change. Channel Africa News, I'm Onele Nsinzi.
SABC News. Headlines. The African Perspective.
Let's check in with the world of sports now. Here is Musibudi Makura, who's got our details.
Sports on Channel Africa. The African Perspective.
Thank you very much, Asanda. Very good morning once again from the sports desk. Now, Olympic champion Sifan Hassan has confirmed her decision to skip the Athletics World Championships in Tokyo next month. That's after deciding to take up this weekend's Sydney Marathon. Now, Hassan, who won the Olympic marathon at the Paris Olympic Games just last year, has represented the Netherlands at every World Championship since 2015, winning 6 medals, including her 1,500 as well as a 10,000 meter golden double in Doha back in 2019. Now, the Sydney Marathon, which takes place this coming Sunday, has joined London, New York, Boston, Chicago, as well as the Berlin Marathon as part of the Elite Marathon Major Series for the first time this year. Now, the World Championships will take place from the 13th until the 21st of September at Tokyo's National Stadium, where Hassan won the 5,000 as well as a 10,000 meter double, as well as a bronze medal in the 1,500 meter at the Olympic Games. That was about 4 years ago. Meanwhile, Eliud Kipchoge says the desire to inspire others drove him to enter this week's Sydney Marathon, with the Kenyan's legend now admitting that there was huge pressure on him to win. The 40-year-old, arguably the greatest men's marathon runner of all time, headlines the field on Sunday in a race being run for the very first time as one of the elite world marathon majors. It puts it on par with the London, New York, Tokyo, Berlin, Chicago, as well as Boston, as well as a two-time Olympic champion and 11-time major winner Kipchoge was now eager to be involved. Kipchoge failed to finish a marathon at the first time of asking at the Paris Olympic Games just last year, sparking a speculation about his career may be nearing an end. But he ran the London Marathon in April of this year, finishing 6th, and said he was unfazed about the retirement talk. Well, in case you missed it, Manchester United suffered a shock early Carabao Cup exit on penalties to League Two side Grimsby Town, a result that will be remembered for many years to come. United lost on a 12-11 on penalties to the League Two side Grimsby Town in the Carabao Cup second round last night. Now, Grimsby led 2-0 before Brian Mbemo struck, and then Harry Kane levelled matters in the second half. Now, Ruben Amorim has now failed to win any of Manchester United's first 3 matches this of the season, despite signing a new front line with the likes of Benjamin Sesko, Mateus Cunha, as well as Brian Mbemo, all having featured in that tie last night, with the pressure now growing ahead of their Premier League fixture at home to Burnley this coming Saturday.
And we lost, the best team won. Yeah, I think it's really clear what they spoke. So let's move on from this day, and I think was really clear for everybody what happened today.
On to some tennis news now. American tennis player Taylor Townsend said former French Open champion Jelena Ostapenko told her that she had no class and no education in a heated US Open row. Now, tension between the pair escalated after a net cord went in Townsend's favour during a 7-5, 6-1 second round win, and the 25th seed Ostapenko accused her of not apologising. The pair had a curt handshake after Townsend clinched the victory before the Latvian Ostapenko made a comment at the net. Both players continued to express their views in an animated argument at Ostapenko's chair.
Yeah, I mean, you know, it's competition. People get upset when they lose, and you can't. Some people say bad things. She told me I have no class, I have no education, and to see what happens when we get outside the U.S. So I'm looking forward to it. I mean, I beat her in Canada outside the U.S. I beat her in New York outside the U.S. So let's see what else she has to say.
Meanwhile, defending champion Aryna Sabalenka set the platform for a US Open second-round victory over Polina Kudermetova, thus by continuing her formidable tie-break record. Sabalenka claimed her 17th consecutive tie-break and a 7-6, 6-2 win in Wednesday's night session in New York. Now, being able to lock in when it mattered the most proved quite crucial once again for the world number one, who has now won 10 of her past 11 matches when winning a first-set tie-break. Now, taking the opener dampened her Russian opponent's spirit and also led to Sabalenka going on to break very early in the second set. Sabalenka's service game was still a little scratchy, digging deep to save 2 break points before holding for 3-1, but her level then improved as she raced towards a victory. Sabalenka, by the way, is aiming to become the first player to defend the women's singles title since Serena Williams did so back in 2014. Next up for her, she'll face off with Canada's Leila Fernandez, who was a beaten finalist back in 2021 when she lost to Britain's Emma Raducanu.
Well, yeah, the first set was super tight, was super aggressive. It felt like there was almost like no points. It was more about serve and first shot. It was super quick. I'm glad that I was able to handle that pressure and put it back on her, and then get that first set. And then in the second set, I felt much better on the return game. Serve was much better. So I'm really glad that in the first set I stayed really strong.
All right, so that concludes your sports news this hour. For any sports stories you'd like to share with us, simply send us an email to newsroom@channelafrica.co.za or give us a call. The newsroom line is +27 11714 4459. I'm back with the final sports update on Africa Rise and Shine in the next hour. For Channel Africa Sport, I am Mosibu D. Makura.
Sports on Channel Africa. The African Perspective.
Right, let's find out what's been happening in the world of business as we say good morning to Buntle Headbush.
Business news on Channel Africa. The African Perspective.
Thank you, Peter. Good morning. In our top story this morning, an energy expert says nuclear energy has played a role in efforts to diversify energy sources in Africa, but gas, coal and oil will continue to play a big role. Delegates have been attending the Continental Energy and Infrastructure Investment Forum in Sun City in South Africa's Northwest Province. This comes as renewable energy like solar and wind plays a growing role in power generation in South Africa as the country works to mitigate the effects of climate change. The delegates at the forum come from the Democratic Republic of Congo, Namibia, Zambia and Angola and South Africa. Dr. Calvin Kem of Stratec Global Advanced Solutions.
Some of the criteria that will apply is really any viable business model that an MSME has. They really must demonstrate that it is viable, it is sustainable, there is potential for growth and for profitability. For those MSMEs that are also looking to grow but have inadequate collateral, the scheme specifically targets businesses that are creditworthy, lack sufficient collateral.
Cobalt Metals, the mining company backed by US billionaires Jeff Bezos and Bill Gates, says it's received 7 permits to conduct exploration for lithium and other minerals in the Democratic Republic of Congo. The Central African country signed a deal with Cobalt in July, allowing the US miner to initiate a large-scale mineral exploration program. The agreement also positioned Cobalt to acquire Manono, considered one of the world's largest deposits of lithium, which is used in electric vehicle batteries. South Africa's National Congress Youth League Secretary General Mduo Xolo Ngudle says a national dialogue that does not resolve the land question and the economy is only a waste of time. The ANC Youth League is one of the many organizations that have also criticized the national dialogue, which has been convened by President Cyril Ramaphosa. The legacy foundations, including the Steve Biko and Thabo Mbeki foundations, were among the first to pull out of the dialogue's preparatory task teams. Addressing the media at Chief Albert Lutuli House in Johannesburg yesterday, Ngudle says the national dialogue should focus more on the transformation of the country's economy.
We've got to look from Africa with African eyes and say what works for us. You're not going to run an oil refinery on solar and wind. You're not going to run mines on solar and wind and a whole lot of other things. So you better now start taking the 6-year vision, which was always the case in the past. In South Africa in the past, when we built the big coal-fired power stations, these were never 6-month projects. You got to have a 6-year vision, and that starts now.
South Africa's national... apologies for that. Apologies for that. Taking a look at the indicators now, $1 US in Nigeria is trading at 1,534 naira. In Botswana, it's 13 Bula 31. Kenya, the dollar is trading at 128 shilling 45. And in Zambia, it's 23 Kwacha 33. Moving to the BRICS countries, the dollar in Brazil is trading at 5 Rial 43, Russia 80 rubles 34, India it's 87 rupees 71, China 7 yuan 15, and South Africa $1 is trading at 17 rand 68 cents. $1 is trading at 74 pence to the British pound and 86 to the euro. Looking at commodities, gold is trading at $3,390 and platinum at $1,342 per ounce, while the price of Brent crude oil is at $67.47 a barrel. And those are your business news at this hour. I'll be back with more in the next hour. For any business stories you would like to share with us, please send an email to newsroom@channelafrica.co.za or call us on +27 11 714 4459. For Channel Africa Business, I am Buntle Headbush.
Business news on Channel Africa. The African Perspective. New day, new stories. Start your morning right with Rise and Shine on Channel Africa.
South Africa's International Relations Minister, Ronald Lamola, says that the country's involvement in major summits such as the TICAD in Japan, the SADC gathering in Madagascar and the upcoming G20 in Johannesburg goes beyond diplomacy, carrying direct benefits for trade, investment and market access. He was speaking at a media briefing in the country's capital, Pretoria, on Wednesday. Channel Africa's economics reporter Innocent Samosa was there and filed this report.
During the briefing in Pretoria, I asked South Africa's International Relations Minister, Ronald Lamola, whether South African exporters should remain hopeful as the country continues to engage with the United States on the 30% unilateral trade tariffs.
What we do want to say, as you have asked, what do we say to the people of South Africa, is that we have to prepare ourselves for any eventuality. An eventuality where there could be an agreement to reduce the tariffs, and an eventuality where there will be no change to the current tariffs that we have, the 30%, to live with them. So these are the consequences that we have to prepare ourselves to live with, to cope, and to build our own resilience as a country. It can be seen as a situation of difficulty, which it is, but it can also be an opportunity for us to build our own self-sustainability in the various sectors of our economy.
Meanwhile, reports suggest that South Africa's National Treasury and the heads of major banks have been in discussions over the risk of the country being cut off from the international payment system, SWIFT, should U.S. lawmakers impose sanctions. The minister responded to these concerns, saying,
with regards to the SWIFT international banking system, at this stage we do not have any non-verbal notifying the South African government that we will be switched off from the SWIFT system. I've seen from an article or a newspaper report about this, which seems to have emerged from the what is currently the ongoing Justice Committee investigation. So it's a speculation by the article, and so there is no such intention that we have received from our side, and we treat it as speculation.
The minister revealed that Nigeria will also host a G20 meeting on industrialization and agriculture in Abuja this October.
There's also a meeting on industrialization and agriculture in Abuja, in Nigeria, in October 2025. Again, we also thank Nigeria for agreeing to host one of these meetings. This shows our commitment to ensure that the African voice is heard and does play a role in the hosting of the G20.
For Channel Africa News, I'm Innocent Samosa at the Department of International Relations in Pretoria, South Africa.
Your morning companion with the stories that matter. This is Rise and Shine on Channel Africa.
Just gone over 1:45 Central African time, 15 minutes before we get to the top of the hour. This Saturday, 30 August, the world marks the International Day of the Disappeared, a reminder of the countless families still searching for missing loved ones. Ahead of the global commemoration, the International Committee of the Red Cross, or the ICRC, and the South African Red Cross Society are hosting a regional event in Pretoria today, bringing together government officials, civil society, and families directly affected. To discuss the significance of this day and the work being done to address the needs of these families, we're joined by Vaughan Rousseau, who is legal advisor at the ICRC. Vaughan, thank you for joining us. How are you this Thursday?
Thank you so much, Asanda. Thank you so much for having me. I'm very well, thank you. I hope you are too.
We are well, thank you so much. Why is the International Day of the Disappeared such an important day for the International Committee of the Red Cross and families of the missing?
Thank you so much for the question. The International Day of the Disappeared is a global day which is being commemorated every year on the 30th of August. And it started to become commemorated since the adoption of the International Convention for the Protection of All Persons from Enforced Disappearance. Now, for the ICRC and the movement of the ICRC, which forms part of the International Committee of the Red Cross, the National Red Cross and Red Crescent Societies, as well as the International Federation of the Red Cross, we have many decades of experience with respect to missing persons and their families, and providing humanitarian assistance to families searching for a missing relative. So it is definitely a day to commemorate the missing from armed conflict, migration, other situations of violence, and it is a day to stand in solidarity with the families, to know that the hurt that they feel from having a missing relative does not go unnoticed.
Can you give us a sense of the scale of the issue globally as well as here in the region?
Yes, certainly. So the ICRC's Family Links Network have reported that at the end of 2024, the global missing persons caseload is at around about 284,000 people worldwide. Now, it's obviously very difficult to confirm accurate statistics with respect to missing persons due to the fact that there are many obstacles that families face when they need to go and report missing relatives. And this is for a variety of reasons, one of them being that many times people lack financial resources to access state services, for instance, accessing to police services, and also in rural settings where people might not necessarily be well informed or aware of the mechanisms in place within the state system to go and report a missing person. There is also, across the board, there are also many times the misassumption that there is some kind of a waiting period before a person can be reported missing, which is just absolutely not the case. And it is important to create awareness amongst communities that having to report a missing person needs to be done immediately once a person becomes aware that a person has gone missing. Because the longer a person waits to report a missing person, the more dangerous it becomes for the missing persons themselves.
What are the faces of those missing or disappeared persons according to what you've seen?
The phases.
Faces. The type of people. Is it more women? Is it more girls? Is it more of the young people? Is it more of the black poorer communities in rural areas?
So it depends definitely on the circumstances surrounding the disappearance, because as I mentioned before, people go missing in various contexts. Mm-hmm. In armed conflict specifically, soldiers go missing very much often, and then the demographic will be males, because the majority of soldiers in armed conflict are males. Then also with respect to disappearances in the context of migration, when people go missing, when they move cross-border, this is also the case that the majority of men go missing cross-border. But the problem is also the fact that females, the wives, the mothers of those who go missing, they are the ones that bears the burden the most, because they are the ones that are needing information. And oftentimes it is also the breadwinner of the family that go missing. For instance, in the context of migration, when they migrate to different countries in search for better economic opportunities, and then needing to send funds to families across borders in different countries. So it's there's no hard or fast rule. It does affect everyone across the board, but more often than not, females are disproportionately affected by the adverse effects of having a missing relative.
Let's talk about the role then of the ICRC as well as partners like the South African Red Cross in playing in terms of supporting families of the disappeared.
Thank you so much for that. So the ICRC's mandate is grounded in the Geneva Conventions and their additional protocols. And as I mentioned before, the ICRC forms part of a movement which also includes the National Red Cross and Red Crescent Societies, as well as the International Federation of the Red Cross. Now, the ICRC has many services that they do provide to assist families with facilitating the search for missing persons. And we also have activities, specifically the National Red Cross and Red Crescent Societies. They have activities around restoring and protecting family links. We also have various activities such as the Red Safe app and Trace the Face, which families can use to register a missing person. And then the national societies in the different countries can also transfer the information of missing persons that have been reported as information as aid. Now, also for the ICRC, the Central Tracing Agency of the ICRC also plays a very important role, specifically in armed conflict, to transfer information of reported missing persons who went missing in the context of armed conflict specifically, to facilitate the information on missing persons, as well as deceased persons in times of armed conflict, to ensure that deceased people also do not become unaccounted for, because that is also a very important aspect of the missing dynamic, is when human remains or deceased persons in times of armed conflict, as well as in migration, if the human remains are not properly managed, documented and recorded, and the information shared with relevant authorities, then the deceased people can also run the risk of becoming unaccounted for.
What are some of the main challenges in tracing missing peoples and reuniting them with their families? You mentioned that in the first place, people can go missing and families don't have the right know-how in terms of the legal processes on reporting, and also the lack of access to state services. Is there more?
Yes, definitely. So one of the big challenges is also what we find is the lack of safe reporting practices. What we have experienced in the past, and working with vulnerable communities in the humanitarian environment, is that there is certainly sometimes a lack of distrust by families towards the authorities. We've also recognized that sometimes state authorities who are supposed to assist families with the search for their missing relatives, they can be discriminatory or biased towards the people who come towards them to report their missing relatives. For instance, to give an example, when a wife of a missing husband goes to report their missing relative, it's been the case that state authorities or police officials who aren't sensitized around the circumstances of missing people, it's been said, for instance, that your husband will return. He ran away with a different wife, or he's not really missing. You must just wait for a few days, and then they'll come back. So we've seen that there is a stigma that is presented towards people who wish to go and report their missing relative. So we also need to create the awareness around state authorities with respect to their sensitivity around this issue, so that there are safe reporting practices implemented on the ground within police stations and with people who are mandated to investigate missing persons cases.
So who are the main role players involved in tackling this issue? You mentioned the police or law enforcement there, and besides humanitarian groups like the ICRC, we imagine this is very much a collaborative effort that is needed to make efforts, necessarily successful. And also, are these entities doing enough? Are they aware of the roles that they need to be playing?
Thank you so much for that question. So it's definitely a collaborative effort, and all state actors are involved, specifically law enforcement, but also the health authorities, also the statistics departments, but also internal ministries, for instance, Department of Home Affairs. Each one of these departments play a specific role towards ensuring that missing persons are found, that human remains that remain unidentified or unclaimed are reported, and that accurate statistics on these cases be reported to Stats SA, because statistics and accurate statistics, of course, drives political support and accurate state funding towards these cases, and to support the better implementation of the search mechanisms and investigative mechanisms. I wouldn't say at this point in time that the state authorities are not doing enough, because we at the ICRC do work closely with the state authorities. but sometimes funding is a big issue. Funding needs to be amped up to support these state authorities to tackle this issue, because it is a very, very dynamic issue.
So what message would you like to leave with families and communities as the world prepares to mark this day on Saturday? And in what ways should the general public observe this day as well?
Our general message to families is to say to them that they are not alone, and that the ICRC, as well as the international community, recognizes their plight, and we stand in solidarity with them.
Vaughn, we're going to leave it there. Thanks so much for your time and for the work that you do at the International Crescent of the Red Cross. And thank you for shedding light in this matter. Education is also going to be very key, I guess, as far as the general public is concerned, because you never know. You may be seeing families that seem far away from you grappling with this issue, but it could be any one of us who is affected, as you give us those stats. In fact, that there is no one face. There are many faces, maybe all of us. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you so much, Asanda. Have a good day.
You too. Vaughn Rousseau is legal advisor at the International Committee of the Red Cross, discussing the issue of missing persons and the families that get affected when a loved one disappears. This Saturday, 30 August, will be marking the International Day of the Disappeared. 8 o'clock Central African time it is. Good morning to you, and thank you for making Channel Africa your choice for the African perspective on news in and around your continent. My name is Asanda Peta.
And I'm Peter Ndoro, and coming up in this half hour. So, what were you doing at age 22 if you are much older than that? Well, I can tell you that there's a young woman, Akello Peace Merisha, who's a young Ugandan activist who's running for president at the elections next year. So we'll be chatting to her while she's putting her name in the box, on the ballot sheet. And do you think that she stands a chance? Well, let's have a chat with her and let's find out together. That's coming up this half hour. Right now, though, it's time for your news with Onele Nsinzi and the new sports headlines with Musibudi Makura.
SABC News. The African Perspective.
Thank you, Peter. Kenyan human rights activist Boniface Mwangi, who has played a prominent role in anti-government protests, says he plans to run for presidency in the country's 2027 election. Mwangi previously ran unsuccessfully for parliament in 2017 on an anti-corruption platform. He was expelled from neighboring Tanzania in May after traveling there to observe a hearing in a treason case against opposition leader Tundu Lissu. In July, a Kenyan court charged Mwangi with possession of tear gas canisters and a single rifle round found in his home. He pleaded not guilty, saying the authorities had no evidence and called the prosecution a big shame. South Africa's Minister of International Relations and Cooperation, Ronald Lamola, has called for unity and dialogue between the Zambian government and the family of the late former Zambian President Edgar Lungu. Addressing the media in Pretoria, Lamola emphasized South Africa's respect for the judicial process after the Constitutional Court found that the Zambian government is entitled to repatriating Lungu's remains for the purpose of a state funeral and burial. He has urged both parties to engage constructively.
We obviously respect the court process as the South African government, and we usually allow it to take the life of its own. But we have impressed on the two, the Zambian government and the Lungu family, that while there are these court processes, even before there was a court process, we said that it's important that they find each other. They must engage, find each other in terms of the procession and how it must be conducted.
Gunmen have killed at least 2 people and abducted over 100, mostly women and children, in an attack on Nigeria's Zamfara state. Zamfara is the epicenter of attacks by armed men known locally as bandits in northwest Nigeria, where gunmen have made travel and farming dangerous. According to Nigeria's geopolitical research consultancy, SBM Intelligence, at least 4,722 people were abducted between July 2024 and June this year. Residents say they fear further attacks as the armed group is reportedly attempting to cross into the forest boundary again. Zamfara police did not issue comment. Tributes continue to pour in following Eyewitness News associate political editor Tidi Madia's passing in South Africa at a hospital after a short illness. Tidi's recent trending work included reporting from the Oval Office in Washington, D.C. earlier this year during a meeting between U.S. President Donald Trump and South Africa's President Cyril Ramaphosa. In that same trip, she challenged News Nation journalists peddling the false claim of a white genocide in South Africa. At the age of 42, Rise Mzansi spokesperson Mabine Siabe says her ability to engage with politicians across the political spectrum was remarkable.
CD, as she was more commonly known as, was a no-nonsense, fierce and an unbiased practitioner who plied her trade with passion, love and accuracy. Her warm yet direct way of interrogating politicians and other public figures will be sorely missed. On behalf of Rise Mzansi, I wish to convey heartfelt and solemn condolences to the Madia family, the Fourth Estate, and all her loved ones. May her soul rest in peace. Lala Ngoxolo Tsidi.
Lastly, a new study suggests that the weather that helped drive the record fires that have swept through much of Europe this year was made significantly more intense by climate change. The results have been record wildfires that burnt more than 1 million hectares. The BBC's Justin Rowlett.
The World Weather Attribution Group looked at the fires in Turkey, Greece and Cyprus. The researchers say climate change set the conditions by reducing the region's winter rainfall by about 14% and made the scorching temperatures just before the fires 13 times more likely. The team estimated that the hot, dry and windy conditions that drove the fire's spread were made 10 times more likely by global warming. And the scientists warn worse is to come unless planet-warming emissions are dramatically reduced.
For any news stories you'd like to share with us, please send us an email to newsroom@channelafrica.co.za or call us at +27 11 714 4459. Channel Africa News, I'm Oneli Tsinzi.
SABC News. The African Perspective.
And coming up in your sports news this hour, Sifan Hassan confirms her decision to skip the World Championships in favor of the Sydney Marathon, while former champion Daniel Medvedev is fined by the US Open. Details coming up at 8:30.
Wake up, Africa. Peter Ndoro and Asanda Peta are here to help you rise and shine. Weekdays, 6 till 9 a.m. Central African Time. Only on Channel Africa.
Right, what are we looking at? Today is August the 28th, which means spring is in the air. But I want to take you back in time actually today, because when we go back to 1983, the Slavery Abolition Act in British colonies Africa. On this date, the Slavery Abolition Act, originally passed in 1833, officially ended slavery in British colonies, including much of Africa as well as the Caribbean and Canada. This legislative act marked a major shift towards emancipation and played a significant role in ending colonial era slavery. And also, today, I think was the day that Martin Luther King did the I Have a Dream speech. Do you remember that? I mean, I don't think you remember it at the time.
But I know about this.
It's just one of those famous ones, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. So many movies being made about that icon as well, and stalwart for freedom rights.
So I'm really excited about this interview I'm going to be doing just now. Another young woman running for president in Uganda's elections.
What were you doing at the age of 22? Do you remember?
I think I was going to nightclubs dancing.
I think we were all doing that.
I certainly
I think Tando is still doing
running
that.
for president.
The way he looked at you.
Oh gosh!
Yeah.
All right, let's see if she's on the line because I'd love to chat to her. We're busy trying to connect with Akello in Uganda just to get a sense. Can you imagine there are 117, I think. I'm trying to think. Opposition candidates, people, 170 people who've put their names down in Uganda's election. And we know who's going to win because it's just kind of how it works.
Yeah.
we know who's going to win.
I think I'm happy about the women representation. It's a bit better this time around. But yeah, we'll see how they fare in terms of numbers and getting seats in parliament.
Yeah. Do you think, though, that maybe what opposition parties should do is come together and say, rather, let's form a movement under one person rather than split the vote 170 times?
Yeah.
Because that only favors the incumbent who's in charge at the time. Okay, we'll have to wait and see. So we're still trying to get hold of her, and when we do, we'll cross to Uganda. In the meantime, South Africa's we've just done that story. Yeah, is that we're going to take a quick break and then we'll see where we go from there.
In his address, South Africa. New day, new stories. Start your morning right with Rise and Shine on Channel Africa.
África. Conhece o Ntivani?
Claro que sou eu.
Ntivani é uma arte de música de corpo e alma.
Eu amo música africana.
Ele aprecia todos os tipos de melodias e passa os seus dias a ouvir a Channel Africa. Adivinha só, a Channel Africa quer ajudar o Ntivani e os amantes da música em todo o lado a descobrir ainda mais música incrível. Por isso, a Channel Africa está a convocar artistas africanos a submeterem as suas músicas. Músicos, lembrem-se de nos dar todas as informações relevantes no music@channelafrica.co.za. As submissões são a vossa oportunidade de ser ouvidos, mas não garantem inclusão na lista. Todas as submissões serão cuidadosamente analisadas para verificar se cumprem os requisitos da nossa estação. Canal África, a perspectiva africana.
Zochitika ndimadaphiri kamlondola wazochitika pena paliponse.
Mabhizinesi osiyana-siyana mdziko la South Africa ayamba kukhoma msonkho wa 30% akamagulitsa katundu awo ku dziko la United States of America. Ndipo panotele ndikatswiri wa zachuma mu dziko la Malawi Dr. Bertha Chikadza. Boma la South Africa masiku apitawo linanena kuti ngati America akani kutsitsa msonkho bomalo lipeza misika ina. Mungatifotokozere kuti ndizotheka South Africa kupeza misika yomwe ingabweretse ndalama pafupifupi $15 billion zomwe imapezeka ku nsika ya ku America.
Tinene kuti izizi zitha kuchitika koma sizingachitike mwa pompopompo chifukwa tikaonetsetsa izizi zokuti inali nsika wa dziko la America noni nsika wakukhazikika umene dziko la South Africa linali likazolowera kale. Tsono kuti tingonena kuti dziko la South Africa lipezanso nsika mwina mwasangasanga kuti lizitumiza katundu wake mwina zisizingachitike chifukwa kuti tikunena papa $15 billion ndi ndalama zambiri ndithu.
Zochitika ndimadaphiri lolemba mpaka lachisanu pa nthawi ya 7 koloko kufikira 8 koloko madzulo pa Channel Africa. From Cape to Cairo, Dakar to Dar es Salaam, Rise and Shine with Peter Ndoro and Asanda Beda on Channel Africa.
Uganda heads to the polls next year in what's expected to be a fiercely contested election. The country continues to grapple, though, with deep socio-economic challenges ranging from persistent poverty and unemployment to allegations of corruption, human rights abuses, and concerns over the fairness of past elections. Already more than 50 people have expressed interest in running, including 7 women who are promising a new direction for Uganda Among them is Akello Peace Merisha, who's an activist, writer, and community leader. A graduate of Kyambogo University, she's been very vocal on issues such as education, civic empowerment, refugee resettlement, and regional integration. And now she's stepping forward as a presidential candidate, hoping to inspire a new generation of Ugandans. And she joins us now. Thank you so much indeed for joining us, and welcome to the program, Akello.
Thank you very much. I am so happy to be hosted by you, and I hope to have a fruitful discussion. Thank you.
Well, it's a pleasure for us to get to know you, and I'm just wondering, at such a young age, what inspired you to run for office of president?
I've been in a class, and my teacher always tells us that what doesn't wait is time and responsibility. And at 22, I don't really think I am so young, because in the next election cycle, we are going to have, the Gen X. Those are the other generation, because I'm a Gen Z. I'm just 22, and I don't really think that's too young. But what inspires my mandate to show up in an election cycle, cruel as such in a country like mine, is because as young people, we want to see things change. We want to see things transition. We want to see things move away from just talking about them. In my country, we always talk about not exporting minerals. And then at the end of the day, we are going to export it at 80%, raw materials and all that. And you get to realize that we are exporting jobs. So it becomes, something that we as young people have to come up, make sure that it changes, and most importantly, give people a leadership that is action-based, accountable, and willing to see things change. That's majorly why we are in this race at this moment in time. But we also want to redefine what peace has been, because when we first put out our poster, it was peace for Uganda. And we wanted to redefine, because every time our government has always reminded us, in the 1980s, we brought about peace, we liberated this nation. And then we're like, we want to see what peace actually looks like. When our country right now is ranking high in teenage pregnancy, what peace is that does not empower its women and girls? We want to know what peace is that doesn't actually educate its people to be skilled, and most importantly, innovate, rather be workers. And then we are crying about unemployment and all that. So we wanted to see things change. We wanted to offer a new perspective in this election cycle. Thank you very much.
Okay, so last count, there are over 170 opposition parties and independents. What are you bringing to the table that's going to help you stand out and be competitive in this presidential race?
First and foremost, it's being authentic, because it's so hard. At the moment, we have 211 people who have shown interest in these polls, and our ability to stand out will stand on the values that we bring. In a country like mine, the elections are highly monetized. That is one. So it comes back down to who has the paper, who can run the polls better, who can convince people. And at the end of the day, you get to realize that our politics is not idea-based. At the end of the day, it's about, the vibe and all that. Our campaign is built on a clear vision. We want to empower the youth, we want to fight corruption, and ensuring that, the fragmented agendas that have been promised over the years are seen come to pass. We are also going to look forward to interacting with as many young people as possible, and look out for coalitions, get to work with people, because we get to realize that we can't stand alone. But offering practical solutions in a country where most politicians are going to be saying so and so should go, so and so should remain, I think we are going to position ourselves as an solution-based candidature, offering solutions and seeing where the 2026 polls will lead us, most importantly. Yeah.
So you've been outspoken on a number of issues, human rights issues, and with reports of government using military courts to deal with political opponents. Do you feel that you'll be able to campaign freely? I mean, I'm thinking about what's happened to Bobby Wine and Kizza Besigye. Does this not worry you?
It's very tricky, and at a moment where we are seeing people arrested because we're still having people being abducted, taken to torture chambers and all that. One, we want to evolve as well and see how best political campaigns transition to a digital era, but as well the internet coverage in our country is not so good, so we have to reach certain people through grassroots mobilization and the physical way. So we position ourselves to be able to protect the team, most importantly the people we are going to be moving with and all that. And we shall try so hard not to be at the end that provokes the people, the men in uniform, most importantly, because we would love to work with them. Yes, it is scary, but we are going to give it our best shot. That is one. And for the military courts, it's really scary that in our country we are having bail application hearings that are postponed over time. They bring people to court, like Dr. Kizza Besigye was brought to court, and the bail hearing was not finalized to an extent where he had to communicate to his lawyers from prison, and he's like, we are going to boycott the court hearings. So it is scary. That is one. I don't want to tell anyone that I'm not scared, but we are going to give it our best. We're going to try and position ourselves. Whatever comes, we shall face it head on with honesty and boldness. Thank you.
So women make up a small but growing share of Uganda's presidential candidates. I think there's 7 now that have put their names in. Do you see this as a sign that things are changing, that this could be a significant moment in Uganda's history for women and the country in general?
Yeah, sure. I am very honored. Uganda has always had one woman presidential candidate in an election cycle. And this time round, seeing many more women show interest, it's really so beautiful. It's really empowering, and it is going to bring across voices of multiple women, and we look forward to what it's going to bring onto the table, because I believe each female candidate is unique in their own way. They're going to bring a certain value into the election cycle. So to me, it's progress. It shows that women have reached a point where they want to take on space, not by just having one face in an election cycle, but multiple faces, which are multiple voices. And we are looking forward to working with women groups, in this whole election cycle, women's networks and all that. And we are excited to what actually it is going to bring about. So this can amplify the impact of women and listening to more of their voices and all that stuff.
You talk about working with the women's groups. I'm wondering if might it not have been a better idea, and maybe something to consider, rather coming together as a coalition instead of having too many candidates, too many parties that could split the vote?
Well, we are looking forward to coalitions, most importantly, but we are not going to get into coalitions from an end of being victims. So at the end of the day, the people have to be at the core of why we are getting into coalitions, of why we are working together, of why we are having a block vote. So we are going to try, sit, analyze, and see how best we can work together. That's something we look forward to, but we are not going to get into it for the sake of just having a block vote at the end of the day.
Your critics will say that you're too young to be running a country. It's quite a complex thing, and it's more that you don't have enough experience. What do you say to people who say that?
Well, I am very inspired that people who have been in governance for the last 30, 40 years, at the end of the day, they are as well not able to deliver. So it comes back down to what leadership is. Leadership must encompass intentionality. You get, when we see things failing over time, it goes beyond it just being mistakes. We get to understand what are our strategic goals. Are we willing to work with them? So as well, leaders are not made alone. I believe every wise man has, every king has wise men around him. And I am so honored that I'm going to be able to work with a number of young people, work with a number of wise people in this country who have studied a lot of things. And mine majorly is to discern what exactly is good for the country. That is what a person of the president is meant to do. What is good, you have to be able to discern, make the right choices for the people, because you're not going to be like a dictator and the sole thinker of the nation. So I don't think I'm too young, but I think I'm willing to grow. I am willing to learn. I am willing to evolve. I am willing to do everything possible to work for my people, put my people at the core of this campaign and at the core of leadership if God gives us the opportunity to be there. So yes, it's not about being young. It's about the willingness, the intentionality, the motive, the commitment at the end of the day, and willing to learn and evolve.
Now, you've worked with East Africa Must Unite, and I wonder how this has perhaps shaped your thinking and beliefs in terms of Uganda's role in the wider East Africa region and regional integration. Take us through your thinking there.
Okay, so when we first came up with East Africa Must Unite, because it is a young people initiative across different countries in East Africa, most importantly, we wanted to see things evolve, because just like Pan-Africanism, we believe that the East African integration is something that has been hyped and we rarely see results. So it has made me come to a point where we want to see Uganda evolve from just being a country that exports peace to regions and countries that neighbor us, but as well be able to work with them to create more markets, have trade coalitions with them. We want to evolve, we want to grow as a region at the end of the day. So East Africa Must Unite has broadened my mind to the perspectives of the other young people, greater than I in knowledge, who want to see East Africa actually become an action-based bloc and influencing probably the unification of the whole of Africa in the near future, because it's something that a lot of young people look forward to doing and seeing come to pass. So yeah, that is it about East Africa Must Unite.
So Uganda's Anti-Homosexuality Act has attracted a lot of international condemnation, and it does seem to have gotten a lot of support within Uganda, though, a very conservative country in that respect. What's your position on this, what some people might say, homophobic legislation?
Okay. So there is something about this law, because it's very sensitive. It cuts across, the interests of culture, but as well it affects the national interests of our people in relation to partnerships that we have with our other countries at the end of the day. But I am not seeing myself cross the line of my people morally. And just like you said, we are very cultural, conservative at the end of the day. I believe the law is harsh. That is something that we ought to acknowledge. And we ought to find a balance between the cultural interests and then, the national interests. So my position on it would be that I would prefer that we lead with love. If we think our brothers on the other side, whatever they choose to do with their lives, because we believe that is the way of living as well, is wrong, then we ought to show them more love and compassion other than being harsh with them, and maybe we shall see things evolve with time. So yes, I think I would love to find a balance between the cultural interests, if I am person of the president, and then the national interests, but as well to protect the dignity of each and every citizen, because someone being I don't know how best to put
Okay.
it. Someone not being like us doesn't take away their dignity to right of living, most importantly, but as well to interact freely with the community. So yes, I think we ought to find a balance as a country, but as well as stakeholders at national level if that comes to leadership, and knowing what boundaries we shouldn't cross at the end of the day. Thank you.
If you become president, how are you going to deal with unemployment? Because it affects young people the most. How are you going to create jobs?
On the question of unemployment, we are looking at ourselves not being able to export more raw materials. I can tell you that right now in Uganda, our iron ore is being exported between a range of $45 to $65. That's a ton. And when it's exported and processed in the neighborhood, which is Kenya, it is going to be sold, a ton that is refined is going to be sold between $700 and $800. So we want to see ourselves not being able to export more raw materials actually, to be able to have starter jobs. That is one. But when it comes to establishment of self-economic zones, we want to look at the livelihood of our people most importantly, because it's not like we're not having production factories, but what is the wage of our people, most importantly, the investors that are coming in, what is the balance between them and our people? Are we seeing skills being transferred? Are we seeing technology being transferred to our people, that Uganda is as well able to evolve? The issue that we found in this country is that our leaders are willing to give away a lot of things at chicken change price, right? That our oil is going to go away for, a 15%, as long as some of the big people are able to gain. So it doesn't matter what the national interest is in it. We're going to see ourselves do more of production. That is one thing. Uganda is evolving to the TVET, which is a technology, vocational, technical kind of education, and we see a lot of skilling. So we want to see our young people skilled, most importantly being able to innovate and compete on the national scale. Now that will come back to us as a country, as leaders, to be able to find markets, to sign treaties, trade agreements, to be able to find a market outside Uganda, because at the end of the day, we can't just capitalize on the internal revenue, but as well finding markets outside the country will bring in more revenue. So that is one of the ways we are going to do it, but as well trying to reform the education system.
Akello, we're going to have to leave it there, but we certainly wish you the best of luck. We'll be watching your campaign and see how things work out for you. But thank you so much indeed for giving us an opportunity to find out a little bit more about you and how you plan to lead your country. Thanks for your time.
Thank you very much for hosting me. God bless you.
Thank you. That's Akello Peace Merisha, one of the youngest presidential candidates, one of 7 women. In fact, she's an activist and Ugandan presidential candidate in next year's elections. It's 8:30. Here are your news headlines with Onele Nsinsi.
SABC News. Headlines. The African Perspective.
Thank you, Peter. The Democratic Republic of Congo and the M23 armed group have resumed negotiations in Qatar as violence deepens in spite of a recently signed agreement to reach a full peace deal. Mozambique's President Daniel Chapo is in Rwanda on a 2-day working visit where he and President Paul Kagame held excellent relations between their countries and signed new bilateral agreements. And Ukraine is again coming under heavy Russian air attacks, with the capital Kyiv reporting bombardment by ballistic missiles and drones. Channel Africa News, I am Onele Tsinzi.
SABC News. Headlines. The African Perspective.
Let's find out now what's happening in the world of sports. Here's Musibudi Makura with the latest.
Sports on Channel Africa. The African Perspective.
Thank you so much, Asanda. Very good morning from the sports desk. Eliud Kipchoge says the desire to inspire others drove him to enter this week's Sydney Marathon, with the Kenyan legend now admitting that there was huge pressure on him to win the Sunday. The 40-year-old, arguably the greatest men's marathon runner of all time, headlines the field on Sunday in a race being run for the very first time as one of the elite world marathon majors. It puts it on par with London, New York, Tokyo, Berlin, Chicago, as well as Boston, and the two-time Olympic champion as well as 11-time major winner, that is Kipchoge, was now eager to be involved. Kipchoge failed to finish a marathon for the first time at the Paris 2024 Olympic Games, sparking speculation about his career being nearing to an end, but he ran the London Marathon in April of this year, finishing 6th, and said he was unfazed about the retirement talk. Meanwhile, Olympic champion Sifan Hassan has confirmed her decision to skip the Athletics World Championships in Tokyo next month after deciding now to take part in this weekend's Sydney Marathon. Hassan, who won the Olympic Marathon in Paris just last year, has represented the Netherlands at every World Championship since 2015, winning 6 medals, including a 1,500 as well as a 10,000-meter gold double in Doha back in 2019. Now, the Sydney Marathon will take place this Sunday, has joined the likes of London, New York, Boston, Chicago, as well as Tokyo and Berlin as part of the Elite Marathon Majors series for the very first time this year. Now, the World Championships will take place from the 13th until the 21st of September at Tokyo's National Stadium, where Hassan won the 5,000 as well as a 10,000-meter double and the bronze medal in the 1,500-meter at the Olympic Games about 4 years ago. In tennis news now, American player Taylor Townsend said former French Open champion Jelena Ostapenko told her she has no class and no education in a heated US Open row. Now, tension between the two players escalated after a net cord went in Townsend's favour during a 7-5, 6-1 second round win, and the 25th seeded Ostapenko accused her of not apologising. The pair had a curt handshake after Townsend clinched victory before the Latvian Ostapenko made a comment at the net. Both players continued to express their views in an animated argument at Ostapenko's chair.
Yeah, I mean, it's competition. People get upset when they lose, and you can't. Some people say bad things. She told me I have no class, I have no education, and to see what happens when we get outside the U.S. So I'm looking forward to it. I mean, I beat her in Canada outside the U.S. I beat her in New York outside the U.S. So let's see what else she has to say.
Well, stay with tennis news. Former champion Daniil Medvedev has been fined a total of $42,500 by the US Open on Wednesday for his spectacular meltdown during a loss to Benjamin Bonzi at the start of the week. So Medvedev lost 6-3, 7-5, 6-7, love 6 and 6-4 on Sunday, but it was his behavior in the third set that dominated the headlines when the 2021 champion launched a tirade against the Empire and whipped up jeering fans who stopped his opponent from serving. Now, the 13th seed was facing match point and a straight sets loss when a photographer entered the Louis Armstrong Stadium court just as the Frenchman Bonzi misfired his first serve. Now, the official then allowed Bonzi another first serve because of the unauthorized incursion, sparking wild scenes as Medvedev raged at the official. Medvedev smashed his racket after the match concluded, prompting the 6-time Grand Slam champion Boris Becker to say that the Russian needed to seek professional help in the wake of his public meltdown. And finally, Czech number 21 seed Thomas Mahag advanced to the third round of the US Open yesterday with a comprehensive straight set victory over Brazilian rising star João Fonseca. Now, the 1 hour and 58-minute match concluded with a final score of 7-6, 6-2 and 6-3 at the UST Billie Jean National Tennis Center in New York. The 22-year-old Mahag dominated the statistics. He hit about 30 winners and won 80% of his first serve points. He also capitalized on key moments, converting 3 of his breakpoint opportunities and never faced one himself throughout that match. Well, that is a wrap of your sports news this morning on Africa Rise and Shine. For any sports stories you'd like to share with us, remember to send us an email to newsroom@channelafrica.co.za. Alternatively, we are also on call. The newsroom line is +27 11714 4459. I'm back with more sporting updates with the On The Move team in the next hour. For Channel Africa Sport, I am Mosibudi Makure.
Sports on Channel Africa. The African Perspective.
Ukatili wa kijinsia unaharibu maisha na kutenga jamii. Hutokea nyumbani, shuleni, kazini na mara nyingi kwa ukimya. Lakini hauwezi kuendelea. Ukiona, ongea. Ikiwa unaumia, funguka, kwa sababu kutofanya lolote sio chaguo. Sikiliza vituo vyote 19 vya redio kuanzia Jumatano ya tarehe 23 Julai kwenye mijadala, ushauri, tamthilia, maonyesho ya elimu na mahojiano na wataalamu, manusura, watunga sheria na nchi nzima iliyoathirika na ukatili wa kijinsia kwenye vituo vyako pendwa vya redio. Piga simu 0800 428 ili kuripoti unyanyasaji au kupata msaada. GBV ikomeshwe na wewe. Ujumbe huu umeletwa kwenu na shirika la SABC.
Call us on +27 63 406 9126 and contribute to the conversation.
Let's check in with the world of business now as we say good morning to
Business news on Channel Africa. The African Perspective.
Thanks, Asanda, and a very good morning to our listeners. In our top story this hour, Cobalt Metals, the mining company backed by US billionaires Jeff Bezos and Bill Gates, says it's received 7 permits to conduct exploration for lithium and other minerals in the Democratic Republic of Congo. The Central African country signed a deal with Cobalt in July, allowing the U.S. miner to initiate a large-scale mineral exploration program. The agreement also positioned Cobalt to acquire Manono, considered one of the world's largest deposits of lithium, which is used in electric vehicle batteries. South Africa has reaffirmed its commitment to strengthening economic ties within the BRICS bloc. Speaking at a media briefing in Pretoria, Minister of International Relations and Cooperation Ronald Lamola says there are ongoing efforts among BRIC member states to boost intra-bloc trade. He highlighted that South Africa's Trade and Industry Minister Pakstao is currently in India, actively engaging in talks to further advance this shared economic agenda.
Yes, there is ongoing engagements amongst the BRICS members, individually and as a bloc, to continuously increase trade amongst each other. And as we speak now, our Minister of Trade and Industry, Parks, is in India, continuing in that trajectory to increase trade amongst BRICS members. And we will further expand with others in that regard.
FNB Zambia has signed a memorandum of understanding with the Zambia Credit Guarantee Scheme to establish an initiative aimed at enhancing access to finance for micro, small and medium enterprises nationwide. The aim of the initiative is not only to strengthen financial inclusion, but also to foster a stronger culture of entrepreneurship, particularly among youth and women-led businesses. Kapumpe Chola, the CEO of FNB Zambia, explains the types of MSMEs targeted by the scheme.
Some of the criteria that will apply is really any viable business model that an MSME has. They really must demonstrate that it is viable, it is sustainable, there is potential for growth and for profitability. For those MSMEs that are also looking to grow but have inadequate collateral, the scheme specifically targets businesses that are creditworthy but lack sufficient collateral.
An energy expert says nuclear energy has played a role in efforts to diversify energy sources in Africa, but gas, coal and oil will continue to play a big role. Delegates have been attending the Continental Energy and Infrastructure Investment Forum in Sun City in South Africa's Northwest Province. This comes as renewable energy like solar and wind play a growing role in power generation in South Africa as the country continues to work to mitigate the effects of climate change. The delegates at the forum come from the Democratic Republic of Congo, Namibia, Zambia, and Angola and South Africa. Dr. Calvin Kem of Stratec Global Advanced Solutions.
We've got to look from Africa with African eyes and say what works for us. You're not going to run an oil refinery on solar and wind. You're not going to run mines on solar and wind and a whole lot of other things. So you better now start taking the 6-year vision, which was always the case in the past. In South Africa in the past, when we built the big coal-fired power stations, these were never 6-month projects. You got to have a 6-year vision, and that starts now.
The computer chip maker NVIDIA has announced second quarter profits that surpassed market expectations. The Californian company, the world's biggest supplier of artificial intelligence software, reported record revenue of almost $47 billion, driven by demand from big tech companies, but NVIDIA's shares dropped by 2.3%. The BBC's Lily Jamali explains.
The concern there is that some of NVIDIA's biggest customers, think OpenAI, think Meta, other hyperscalers as they're known that are doing so much of this AI development, they sort of are under the gun right now to prove that all this money that they're pouring into AI is going to be able to eventually turn a profit. But overall, these numbers are pretty impressive. This is the first $4 trillion company ever. Growth continues to be robust, and they painted a pretty sanguine outlook for the quarter that we're currently in.
And now for a look at the indicators, $1 US in Nigeria is trading at 1,534 naira. In Botswana, it's 13 pula 31. Kenya, the dollar is trading at 128 shilling 45, and in Zambia it's 23 kwacha 33. Moving to the BRICS countries, $1 in Brazil is trading at 5 rial 43. Russia 80 rubles 34, India 87 rupees 71, China 7 yuan 15, and South Africa $1 is trading at 17 rand 68 cents this morning. $1 is trading at 74 pence to the British pound and 86 to the euro. Looking at commodities, gold is trading at $3,390, platinum at $1,342 per ounce, while the price of Brent crude oil is at $67.47 a barrel. And those are your business news. For any business stories you'd like to share with us, please send an email to newsroom@channelafrica.co.za or call us on +27 11 714 4459. For Channel Africa Business, I am Buntle Headbush.
Business news on Channel Africa. The African perspective. Wake up to the essence of the continent. Rise and shine on Channel Africa.
Technology innovation, an open hybrid cloud technology company operating in over 40 countries, hosted a media roundtable in Johannesburg, South Africa on Tuesday, exploring Africa's technology future with discussions on artificial intelligence or AI, cloud adoption, and the evolution of hybrid work models. Channel Africa's Sisi Sikhalo attended the event and filed the following report.
Red Hat provides hybrid cloud infrastructure, application services, cloud-native development and automation solutions based on open source technologies. The company says they enable organizations to build great products for customers, and they've got partners that certify technology on their platform. AI and cloud ecosystem lead for Sub-Saharan Africa, Eugene D'Souza, says companies and developers in the region have to compete globally, but with limitations. He says, however, they do not have to do it alone.
I think anybody globally can leverage on this, and for Sub-Saharan Africa in particular, I think it's very important that those that are creating applications, developing applications, or deploying automation for IT infrastructure or AI infrastructure don't try to do this alone. They don't need to do it alone anymore. They now have the best of, breed in class. They can start to develop solutions to problems that their customers have had for a long time that they potentially wouldn't be able to do in the past, and now they're able to do it.
The company Red Hat sponsored a group of 4 learners, which some of them are from the townships in Gauteng province of South Africa. The group has developed an app called VukaLearn, which is still in the process of being launched, but has solutions to some of the societal problems. A member of the team, Ivan Gavenda, speaks on their app.
Usually, students struggle with how teaching is done nowadays. A lot of people are starting to use different methods such as flashcards, quizzes, past papers. It's not just the same methods anymore. So that's one of the features of VukaLearn. It takes your textbooks or your study material and it puts into different learning formats. You can have games, podcasts, activities, reward programs. Another catch of VukaLearn, what makes it different is there's something called Auntie B. A lot of the problem that students have was they don't have a social worker or a therapist per se, but this specifically Auntie B is something like a specific therapist for students and their needs in school, whether it be in their personal lives or in their school lives.
Not only does the app focus on learning, but most importantly, it gives the youth access to mental health services. Gavenda again.
A lot of students suffer from mental health issues. So one of the things that we added was a mood calendar. So you would express your mood per day. It's like something when you log into the app, it asks you. And this basically logs it. This helps the Auntie B to understand your problems and how it works.
The group of learners wish to partner with relevant stakeholders, including government and the private sector, to have the app launched. For Channel Africa, I'm Sisi Sekhalo in Johannesburg, South Africa.
Your morning companion with the stories that matter. This is Rise and Shine on Channel Africa.
World Water Week 2025 is currently underway in Stockholm, Sweden, running from the 24th to the 28th of August, today being the last day of the event. This year, the event is held under the theme Water for Climate Action. The event, organized by the Stockholm International Water Institute, brings together experts, policymakers, and stakeholders from across the globe to find solutions for building resilience and promoting sustainable water management. Joining us from Sweden is the Executive Secretary of the Inkomati and Maputo Watercourse Commission, Cindy Mtimkulu, to share insights on the week's discussions and the role of regional cooperation in safeguarding our shared water resources. Cindy, thank you so much for joining us. Welcome to Rise and Shine.
Thank you so much. It's a pleasure to be part of this program today.
We appreciate your time. Tell us firstly, what is the Inkomati and Maputo Watercourse Commission? A bit of background there.
Thank you so much. The Inkomati and Maputo Watercourse Commission, shortly called INMACOM, is a transboundary water management institution that is aimed at managing the shared water resources between the Republic of South Africa, the Kingdom of Eswatini, and the Republic of Mozambique. We have signed an agreement on using the water resources equitably and also sharing the water resources between the 3 member states. And the role of this institution is to implement that agreement that we have signed in 2002 as the 3 member states.
So what has have your key takeaways so far from the discussions at the World Water Week 2025 been?
Yes, my key takeaway from this World Water Day gathering is that there's the agency and the way water is available and the way we use it, it's interconnected, and the water resources are connected to climate, to biodiversity. And the theme for this year, which is Water for Climate Action, underscores the importance that water isn't just a casualty of climate change, but it is a vital tool for mitigating and adapting climate change. So the discussions we are having here are emphasizing that we have to take a holistic approach in managing the entire water cycle, from the water that is in the glaciers, the water that is in the oceans, the water that is in the rivers, as well as groundwater, so that we are able to adapt to the eventualities that are being caused by climate change.
So how does the theme Water for Climate Action resonate with the current challenges faced in the Inkomati and Maputo water courses?
Yeah, in the basins that we share between South Africa, Eswatini, and Mozambique, the water resources are already highly stressed. As you would know, the water is used for irrigation, but in the South African side, there's also the energy generation. The water is used for cooling in thermal power production. In Mozambique, again, there's a lot of industries and things like that. So it's already highly stressed and susceptible to the increasing pressures of climate variability. So the climate action will involve that we need to adapt to this variability of the water. We must build resilient systems so that we can deal with these extreme impacts. But we all know also the Republic of Mozambique especially is always facing challenges of flooding. So we have to mitigate the impacts of too much water because when water comes unexpectedly in large amounts, in our case, we're always affected by flash flooding. So when it comes too much unexpectedly, we have to have means to be able to deal with that, and therefore we have to be able to anticipate that through maybe forecasting systems and early warnings so that we can deal with that. But the other issue is the equity. When there's too little water and we have an agreement to share that water, we have to find a way to ensure that we still each get a share of the available water resources at that time.
So what are the practical solutions or innovations that have stood out for you in this gathering, and where to from now in terms of those deliberations, the networks and connections, and how they will influence progress within this regard?
Yes, instead of just talking about climate change and the issues thereof, we need to really do practical things. And for us as the INMACOM, we have to focus on our activities. One of the things that we'll need to really strengthen as a result and outcome of this is joint planning. We need to work together in planning how we split equitably the available water resources. So we need to have tangible strategies on how we are going to do projects that are climate adaptive. The other key aspect is the data. Data is important for managing anything, and we have to be able to collect data in the 3 member states in a way that will facilitate that we're able to make informed decisions. So we have to strengthen our data sharing platforms to ensure that all member states have access to crucial data on the water flow, on the rainfall, climate forecast, but also to be able to have more accurate and coordinated responses to climate-related eventualities. And then there's the big role that we have to play as a transboundary institution in resolving conflicts. When there's too much or too little, then there are instances where the downstream user may feel that the upstream user is the one that has caused that circumstance. So our role as INMACOM has to be very strong in conflict prevention, which means we have to engage our stakeholders even more now and to be able to ensure that they understand how the water resources are behaving and they do not then tend to just fight each other because of things that are happening.
All right, Cindy, thanks again so much for your time. We'll leave it there for now, and I guess safe travels back to our continent there.
Thank you so much. Yes, we are finishing today and looking forward to be back home. Thanks a lot.
Awesome. Executive Secretary of the Inkomati and Maputo Water Course Commission, Cindy Mtimkulu. She's in attendance there at the World Water Week 2025. That's in Stockholm, Sweden.
A fresh morning, a fresh perspective. Stay tuned to Rise and Shine on Channel Africa.
As Uganda heads towards its 5th multi-party election in January, the Electoral Commission reports a surge in presidential hopefuls, with over 170 individuals collecting nomination forms. Among them is 34-year-old Yvonne Mbara, a social justice lawyer and activist known as #MadamPresident. In this week's Channel Africa Conversations podcast, my colleague Peter Ndoro spoke with her about the crowded field and why she believes the bigger challenge lies not in splitting the vote, but in political parties putting their survival ahead of the nation's transformation. Let's take a listen.
And we have been trying to actually push structures to see which levels of collaborations we can actually come up with, play smart here and there. But the challenge largely remains that so many, for example, political parties prioritize their own survival over national transformation. So it becomes very difficult to align in terms of vision, but also there are so many divisions in terms of internal politics. There's so much patronage in politics and with most of political parties that we could actually align with. But also at the end of the day, we feel they don't serve the interests of women because majority are male dominated and there's no space for women to actually take lead. Most of them will reach out to you to become a running mate, but never the decision maker. I don't think running mates make decisions. It's party flag bearers that make the decisions. So I constantly reiterate that in order for women to actually take on leadership, they have to be at actual decision-making tables. They have to be at decision-making levels. And it cannot happen unless we are all willing to collaborate. But also that level of collaboration needs one vision. It needs one bold voice speaking for each other. It needs a people-centered strategy, not just trying to survive, trying to get as much money as possible from the government. I think you've heard that majority of them are actually going to receive money, taxpayers' money, to be able to run these elections and run their administrative costs. We feel that majority of them have lost their vision for actually being people-centered. They no longer...
So, catch that full interview of the 2026 Ugandan presidential candidate, lawyer, African youth leader Yvonne Mpambara, speaking to our colleague here, Peter Ndoro, on this week's Channel Africa Conversations podcast. That's on YouTube as well as the SABC Plus app.
A fresh morning, a fresh perspective. Stay tuned to Rise and Shine on Channel Africa.
Okay, it's a little bit before 9 o'clock and we've just got a bit of time to find out from Palisa and Benjamin what's going to be happening on The Move.
Good morning, guys. Well, On The Move has been looking at, a woman's focus and looking at women in male-dominated industries. Today we'll be speaking to a firefighter, someone with 17 years of service. She's also a platoon commander and she delivered her 40th baby this year.
Oh my goodness gracious.
40th as a firefighter. So,
okay. Yes, I wasn't focused.
Wow. That's exciting. Okay.
Also something really exciting quickly in our Becoming feature. We're going to be speaking about body positivity with someone who struggled a lot throughout her career, comedian Celeste Ntuli.
Okay, fascinating.
Right. Nice.
That's what's coming up.
That's how we come to the end of this edition, the 28th August edition of Rise and Shine. We'll be back tomorrow. And of course, stay tuned to Channel Africa. I'm Asanda Peta.
And I'm Peter Ndoro. It's 9 o'clock. The news is next. Here's Onele Nsimsi.
SABC News. The African Perspective.
Thank you, Peter. Looking at your top stories, the DRC and the M23 armed group resume negotiations and Ukraine again coming under heavy Russian attack. Your latest news. Greetings to our listeners. The Democratic Republic of Congo and the M23 armed group have resumed negotiations in Qatar as violence deepens in spite of a recent signed agreement to reach a full